There's going to be a lot of you, I'm sure, that's probably thinking that I'm doing this vPub about blends tonight because if I evangelise about whiskey, then every now and again I have to dedicate at least one vPub to a huge category of blended whiskey. That's not true. It's not true at all. I want to evangelise and get excited about any whiskey, all whiskey. It's usually driven by flavour, by excitement, by something interesting. That is what has inspired tonight's vPub, because I have genuinely come across some fantastic and interesting blends recently, and I would like to share them with all of you. I'll see you in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thursday night. Welcome to the vPub. I hope you're all doing very well. I just need to pour a dram. I've already had one tonight, but I was enjoying it and I got through it a wee bit quicker than I imagined. It's been sitting here as I was setting up tonight, and I'm just going to top it up with the same thing. I think it's a wonderful wee whiskey, regardless of the category of Scotch whiskey that's written on the label. It is just honestly good whiskey. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. You know, the way that whiskey is labelled, it has to be labelled in a certain way. But if we're all really in it for what we say we're in it for, that we love whiskey and we love flavour and we love contemplating whiskey and just sitting and enjoying whiskey, then sometimes we need to kind of see past the kind of sometimes a wee bit clunky categorization of Scotch whiskey. Sometimes we need to make accommodation for the blend word, I think, and I think it's becoming more relevant to do that as time goes on. That's kind of what we're going to be focusing on tonight, because I think that we might be starting to see the rise of the blends and maybe suggest that 2023 could be the year of the blend. I don't know. It started a couple of years ago, but it's starting to gather some interesting pace recently. That's what we're going to be talking about, but more on the topic in a wee minute. Before we get started, I'm going to do what I always do. While everybody's getting the notifications that the vPub's kicked off, while everybody's pouring themselves a dram or a glass of water or running off to get themselves organised and ready, I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to jump into the lounge, hang out with you beautiful whiskey folk, dedicated barflies, find out how you are and welcome you. I hope you're all very, very well. I'm looking out for the orange as I always do. So if you're trying to get my attention, I'll do my very, very best to catch you when you type Aquavitae. It should be very obvious to me. Gerben Blocker, my friend from the Netherlands, is in saying, hello, Roy. I do have an amazing interest in SMWS Razzle Dazzle blended malt. Good for you, Gerben. As long as I don't care what's in the glass tonight, as long as it's something that you can enjoy. I'm going to suggest that the theme I'm going to cover tonight, it's going to be difficult for a lot of you to get the same whiskey in the glass simply because of, I'm not suggesting these are parochial whiskies, they're just very, very local whiskies and you can only buy them if you're here. But there is a sense of that right now. But we are talking about Scotch whiskey, we are talking about blended Scotch whiskey, and we're talking about me sipping it and buying it in Scotland. And if it's successful and if it's well received, then surely that will ripple forward out to the export markets too. You might not have a lot of choice of the type of whiskey I'm going to share with you tonight where you are right now, but in the future, it bodes well. So just pour whatever is in your glass, whether it's a malt, a blended malt, a blend, or anything else, a wee cup of tea or some water. Doesn't matter. Whiskey with Molly Bennett's here. Good to see you, buddy. Evening, Roy. Stuffed with hay fever, but looking forward to the vPub. Listen, the pollen seems to be off the scale right now, Ben. Everybody's struggling with it. My whole family's struggling with it. I only very occasionally suffer, and I've been okay so far, so fingers crossed. Ian Bruce is saying, good evening, Roy. My youngest even giving you a shout of hello as you're on our telly. Hello right back. Hello to Ian Bruce's youngest. Fantastic. Good to have you in. It's quite disturbing when I see images of me on a big telly, but aye. Rob Smith is saying, good evening, Roy and Barflies. Good to see you, and Rob. Welsh Torres here. Good to see you, Welsh. I hope you're doing well. I did catch a wee comment to suggest that you're already a couple of drams in and enjoying yourself, buddy. It's brilliant to welcome you behind the bar. Hellswood is saying, good evening, Roy. Trying our best to blend in. Oh, I see what you did there, Helen. Fantastic. I hope you and Andy are both very, very well. Good to have you. Drew from Arizona is saying, greetings, Agwaviti. Just popping in, Roy, as I have to head out the door. Enjoy my fellow barflies. Drew, it's wonderful for you to consider us and just drop in to say hello before a busy night out there in Arizona. Sorry, a busy afternoon. Cheers, buddy. Enjoy. Stefan is in. Good to see you, Stefan Novak. And Jimmy Legg, of course. Jimmy Legg is here. It means it's a legitimate vPub if Jimmy's in. Well, I can tell you that even the neck pour of this peat monster is pretty good. Smoky lime cream. So what we're talking about here is Jimmy doesn't have any of the blends that I'm going to be talking about tonight. And he doesn't have many blends generally in his collection. Jimmy's probably typical of so many of us. And it's not Jimmy's fault. It's blended Scotch whiskey's fault. It's just the shape of it. We find it a little bit boring. We find it anemic. It's not that we haven't tried it or we won't try it. It's that the times that we have crossed the path and tried it, it's not engaged us, and we've quickly switched back to our malt. But tonight, Jimmy has opened a blended malt whiskey. He is openly sticking in his malt lane. He's opened a Compass Box Peat Monster, which is 100% blended malt whiskies. Very different from what I'm going to be talking about tonight. More on that in a second. But he's opening one from 2016. He's had it for a long time, and he's popped the cork for tonight's vPub. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Jimmy, and you can let us know how it develops from the neck pour in the night as it goes on. Sandro Fazzolari is in. Good to see you, Sandro. He's saying good evening, everyone. And ciao. Good to see you, buddy. Ciao to you too. And Max Kreitner in Austria is saying good evening, my friend. Good to be in the vPub. Looking forward to it all week. Buddy, we're always looking forward to welcoming you here as well, Max. Wonderful to have you. And I hope Christina is doing well too. Jim Whiskey Novice is in. How's it going, folks? Long time no see. Just tap out around 10 on school nights, so I haven't been in for ages, but still around. Still around, like he's saying, Slancher. Listen, if anybody's interested, Jim is hosting a session on his live stream on his channel, The Whiskey Novice on YouTube. So if you click on Jim's name right now, and that will whisk you off to YouTube. In fact, could I do that if I clicked on Jim's name? Would that take me to... No. Maybe that doesn't work. But everybody knows Jim, right? He's the Whiskey Novice, Whiskey with an E. He's got a live stream on Monday night that I'm very excited to be participating in. No doubt he'll have some banana skins and interesting things up his sleeve as he treats us to a blind challenge. I look forward to that, Jim. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you and the folks on Monday night. Good to have you in here, buddy. Bruno Martins is saying, good evening, Roy. Glad to be present once again in the vPub. Bruno, it's always a pleasure to have you. Obrigado, my friend. Nice to see you. Jerry Miller is saying, hello, Roy. Good to see you, Jerry, as well. Always a pleasure to see you, my friend. Feels like you're a welcoming regular too. Oops. And again, it jumps. That's okay. It's okay if it jumps. Arnie Tiger is here. Arnie, so good to see you. Luna Aaron is here. Wonderful. Orange Rule is in. Don Miguel, evening to all of you from Spain, sipping a wee dram of Spice Tree. Fantastic. Again, blended malt. We're in the blended malt realm there, Don. I hope you're enjoying it, buddy. Nice to have you in. Bienvenido. Danny Keenan is saying good evening, and Aquavita in the Barflies just dropped in to say hi. I'm working again, unfortunately. I'll catch it on the replay. Slant you, Danny. I appreciate it, buddy. It's nice to have you when you can join us live. But if work calls, I'm glad and grateful to you and everyone that picks up the vPub on the replay. It's brilliant to see the engagement. Whiskey Games Matthew, good to see you. Hi, Roy. I would guess that the Barflies are a blended family from across the whiskey world. Brilliant. I would agree with you, absolutely. And I think it's kind of a good way to consider blending as a concept. We love our single malt. We love our singular experience from a single distillery, from a single location. It's just fascinating, right? It's that laser focused. We can dial right in. It lets us connect with a team behind the scenes. It lets us imagine a place. It lets us imagine a very, very specific distillery making a very specific product. I think that's fascinating, and it's one of the reasons that malt is so compelling as a single malt. The single being that single distillery, that single place. However, if you imagine that you were to have at your disposal all of the flavors, all of the textures, all of the colors in the whiskey palette, in order for you to make something to your whim, surely you have infinite possibility to make amazing things. Why is it that in 2023, the enthusiasts, I mean, blended whiskey is a very, very successful product, and it has been for hundreds of years. at least in the middle of the 19th century. How is it that in 2023, though, that we can still be so averse to enjoying blended whiskey, blended Scotch whiskey that is not blended malt? We probably need to get this off the table right at the start, but blended Scotch whiskey. Why is it, with all that possibility available, why is it so dull? Most of it is dull. Let's be honest. Even the premium stuff, and I'm not talking about for mass market. Of course, the mass market is very successful. It's doing very well. But I'm talking about the enthusiast. It doesn't need to be like, oh no, this is only for mass market. No, this is for enthusiasts. And why can't it be both? So many products are very, very good at being both. We're going to cover a wee bit of that tonight. Good to see you, Matt. And Carl's Crafts is here. Carl Crafts, greetings all. Lovely to be here on vPub tonight. Glad to meet you. So, Carl, you're one of the tallest folk in whiskey. I did get to meet you last week, buddy, and it's great to see you in here. A pleasure to welcome you. One of the products that you are involved with may be featured tonight, and you may even spot it over my right-hand shoulder. Nice to have you in. Somebody's bought me a wee dram. Andrew M is celebrating being a barfly for the last 14 months. Evening, Roy, a couple of blends I'm opening tonight. You and I both, Andrew. Thanks very much for your support as a barfly. Any barflies that are out there, they get access to the cool little emoji, the whiskey-themed emoji and things like that. They also get wee loyalty badges and things. But what they do to support the channel is they keep it ad-free. They keep all the vPubs ad-free. You don't need to sit through monetized ads in order to enjoy the content on the vPub. Thank you, all you beautiful barflies. And also to my Patreon supporters as well, which keep everything possible, honestly speaking. And the Dram Experience is the one who's bought me a wee dram. Good to see you in, Dram Experience. Looking forward to tonight's vPubs. Blends with a high malt content. Okay. Could be a new trend supporting the category. And he's bought me a wee dram. Cheers to you, Dram Experience. I do agree with you. Alan is saying, Alan McLaughlin is here. Got to hang out with Alan just earlier this week too at the Glasgow Whisky Club. Given the success of Compass Box, I think a lot of us are convinced by blends. It's good to see the trend towards new and affordable blends being released lately. Hopefully this trend continues. Okay, so we're getting a lot of chat about Compass Box. We're getting a lot of chat about blended malts. That's okay. If you're going to focus on blended malts, if you love blended malts, if you're bringing along blended malts to drink tonight and you're going to keep buying and enjoying blended malts based on the recommendations of fellow barflies and me and whatever, that's fantastic. But we will not be talking about blended malts tonight, not at any length. And I need to clearly differentiate this. Let me hold up this. I went to my blend section here, my blended Scotch section, and it's fairly full. There's quite a lot of bottles there. But I was trying to find one of the ubiquitous, in the UK we would maybe call it supermarket blends, one of the blends that you can just go in and sub £20, sometimes as low as £15, pick up a 70cl bottle of blended Scotch whiskey and take it home. Blended Scotch whiskey. That is not the type of thing that Compass Box is putting out there and the majority of their releases. It's not the type of thing that Douglas Ling are putting out there in their remarkable regional malts, because those are blends, but those are malt whiskey. It's blends of malt whiskey. Blended Scotch is a completely different drink, and we have to remember that most of the time. It's a different category. You've got malt whiskey blended with grain whiskey. And malt and grain whiskey are definitely different things. They are both based on grain. Grain whiskey can be based on, sure, malted barley, yes, but also wheat or corn or other cereals. If it's made from any other cereal other than 100% malted barley, it's grain whiskey. In Scotland, that's the definition. It's grain whiskey. On the other hand, malt whiskey is absolutely made from 100% malted barley. It's very easy to think about it in that way and make that distinction. As soon as you mix two malts together, it's a blended malt. If you mix two grains together, it's a blended grain. But if you mix these together, it becomes blended Scotch whiskey. So most of the whiskey that you always knew before you were a whiskey enthusiast or a geek, Johnny Walker, Dewar's, Ballantine's, Grouse, Bell's, 100,000 more brands, 90% by volume of all Scotch whiskey is that blended Scotch whiskey. Isn't it strange then that it gets so little airtime in places like the vPub? But there's a reason for it. And it's not our decision. It's not our fault. The decision has been made for us based on the products being offered to us. Whiskey Weekend Drama saying you're welcome, Aquavite. A barfly saying you're welcome. Thank you very much, Harrow. I hope you're doing very well. And Whiskey Straight Al, good to see you, buddy, in Northern Ireland. He's saying, I don't care if it's a single malt, single grain, but still, whatever. All I care about if it's damn good whiskey. And that's experience speaking there, Al, because what's happened is that you've been able to remove some of the emotion, to open your mind a little bit, to bring in some of the kind of excitement that can come from different categories as well. Maybe you've been involved in sipping and tasting blind in the past and been really surprised when you're not pre-programmed or you're predisposed to judging something before you sip it because you know what it is. Blends are at a kind of handicap there because blends have to work really hard if you know that it's a blended Scotch whisky, because so much of the stuff that's available to us is pedestrian. It's intended for the mass market, and it's intended to be, let's say, produced at scale. I'm trying to be kind of polite here. I'm trying to just paint a very broad brush picture of the majority of the blended Scotch market. It's meant to be affordable. It's meant to be made fairly cheaply. And that means that it's going to be out at minimum strength, 40% ABV. It has to be 40% to be called whiskey, so it's 40% ABV. It's got to be a consistent product because people don't understand that whiskey doesn't really want to be consistent. If you're going to age it and for 3 years in an oak vessel, an organic vessel, that one is every bit as different at each time from its neighbor, then that means that it doesn't really want to always play consistently. So they tend to color it to make up for that. Not great. Honestly, not great. It's a wee bit of fakery going on, but that's how it is. That's just the way it is, and it's the way it's always been. Before they were adding caramel, they were treating the casks and things. They were using wee tricks like Paxaret or Pachiret. They also filter it. They polish the whiskey. If it's going to be sold at 40% ABV, it's very low ABV. High malt content blends, not so much grain whiskey. It doesn't really suffer from the same flocculation, the same hazing, the same Scotch mist that malt whiskey can suffer from, but they still chill filter it. That means they force it under pressure through very, very fine mesh filters to take out lots of fats and oils that will otherwise clump when the liquid is cold and make the whiskey hazy. People don't like that. People don't understand why it should be hazy or misty when they pour it over ice or when it's stored in a cold place or whatever it may be. So it's polished. So all of these things are forced from a mass market perspective. So it's understandable. And yet, if 90% of the volume of Scotch whisky is blends, why has there been no effort to make some of it exciting? Why has there been no wee shots of adrenaline? Even when, you can charge a bit more because there is something exciting about it. More ABV, more natural presentation, more flavor. Forget that it's blended. That's changed. But it's taking, from my perspective, more or less, general broad brush, it's taken until very recently for that to happen. Solly JP has bought me a wee dram. Good night, everyone. We'll watch the replay later. Cheers. Solly, it's so nice to have had you in, buddy. Thanks for being part of the vPub tonight. Thanks for dropping by to say hello. Sleep well, and I hope you do enjoy catching up on the replay. I hope we do a good job for you. Cheers, fella. Thanks for the dram. This is a blended Scotch I'm sipping right now. And if I'm in the mood for this style of whiskey, this can go toe-to-toe with so much of my collection. In fact, at the price point, it beats everything. If you weave in value, it beats everything. I've put it up against really quite fantastic competition, and it's done very well. And you know that this is the case because I've actually used this whiskey in the past on the vPub. Tobias Loke has bought me a dram as well. High Rob blends can be great, and I bought some regularly, but through bad batch variation and deterioration, I stopped 5 years ago. Tobias, I understand exactly where you're coming from. Again, I'm going to get caught in that trap of blended malt, but I'm going to use Johnnie Walker Green. I was always an evangelist for Johnnie Walker Green. I loved it. Loved it. And I thought for 15-year-old whiskey, forget about the 40%. In the UK, 40% presentation, or no, sorry, Johnny Walker Green, I think, is 43. I've been quoting that before. Despite the low ABV, it's very enjoyable. But the last bottle of Johnny Walker Green label I have, it's here off to the side, I don't think I even need to reach for it, is one of the flattest whiskies I own. So disappointing, because I bought this bottle to replace an empty bottle that I really enjoyed in the hope that I could hold it up and say this is good. But it's weirdly, oddly, ridiculously flat and dull and boring. Wonder how much that is to do with ABV and how much that's got to do with just the cost and demand and pressures on whiskey, that for them to maybe in the past they might have overaged things and put things that are older than 15 in there. I really don't know. But this one that I have is it tastes very tinkered with. Anyway, it's nice to have you, Tobias. And let's see if I can come up with some things for you to keep lookout for on future horizons. And Jimmy Legacy saying JW Green Label is now a shadow of what it was 20 years ago, Aquavitae. All whiskey 20 years ago, especially when we're talking about blends, would have been drawn from much, much deeper stocks. So we have to contextualize this. Jimmy's absolutely right. I can imagine the Johnny Walker Green of 20 years ago would have been something spectacular. I have managed to taste a few old Johnny Walker Greens, but I've never had a full bottle to myself to really get to know it. But it's a fantastic thing to pick up at an old and rare show and things like that, back when the label just said pure malt. Anyway, tonight we're going to stay focused on blended whiskey. So I went over to my blended shelves earlier, and I was shocked to see I don't have any Grouse or Bells. I don't have any Dewars. I don't have any White and Mackay. I don't have any Ballantines. I just have, why? I always had those on hand. Where have they all gone? Well, eventually I've managed to get through them through pouring them. Maybe it's a mixed drink, maybe for various other, I don't know, and it's certainly not the type of thing that I would be looking to replace or restock. There's plenty of things on my shelves to take that place if need be. But I do have one. This is slightly more premium. This was a gift to me by Ronnie. Ronnie gifted this Isle of Skye whiskey to me. And the reason that this is a wee bit more premium is that there's an 8-year-old age statement on here. So it's a nice reassurance from the producer here, Ian McLeod, that everything in this whiskey, everything in this bottle is going to be minimum 8 years old. Fantastic. However, it suffers immediately from this issue that I'm talking about, 40% ABV. Do they think that the higher ABV is a barrier of entry for whiskey drinkers? I don't think that's true. I think that it's legal whiskey at 40% and they put it out at that. We know as experienced enthusiasts that when the ABV creeps up 43, 46, 48%, it's not just heat and alcohol burn that's carried onto our palates, it's flavour. ABV is a fabulous flavour delivery mechanism. Why has the blend sector just always stuck at 40? Because people have just been happy. They get in their lane, they're happy with 40%, and suddenly if it's 43 or 46, I'm not sure. I think that in future, I think we will inevitably see better presented blends. I'm forever the optimist. I know that pessimism never leads to disappointment, but I'm going to be optimistic and say at least certain areas of the category has to lend itself to playing a different tune, to offering something different. The growth of blends over recent years, depending on the year that you look at, some years there's growth, some years it's flat, usually relies on a new market opening up or something like that. But if you compare it to the growth of interest in single malt, it's embarrassingly shy. Why is that? I don't think it's difficult to fathom out. This Isle of Skye is not too bad, but I'm comparing it against a Grouse, I'm comparing it against a Bells, I'm comparing it against one of these. The 8-year age statement probably helps it a little bit, but there is this kind of flat, uniform, linear experience. It's pretty simple. There is some interest in this whiskey, but generally the 40% ABV lets it down, and the experience is one that you're sipping a fairly straightforward, simple, engineered whiskey. It is what it is, and we can't expect it to be anything more than that. It's less than £20 a bottle. That's blended Scotch whiskey. But where can we go from there? I think there is lots and lots of scope for massive improvement. And I've said it for years on the vPub that the most neglected category in Scotch is not weird things like blended grain, and it's actually just traditional blended Scotch whiskey, our bread and butter. Bud Jenkins, so good to see you in tonight. I had a cup of coffee from one of your running mugs tonight, Bud, and I thought of you. Good to see you. In my experience, many people who don't love whiskey are afraid of ABV. They think it always means heat and spice. That's right, Bud, until you give them two together. One is flavorful and super smooth and easy, 46%, and one is 40% but flat. And they immediately are drawn to flavor. This one I've got in my hand right now. So soft, so approachable, so easy, 46% ABV. Maclean Rare makes a very good point. He's saying 40% is good for the profit, Roy. It's Occam's razor. Absolutely. Doc, there's no question that that's going to be, but it can't sustain. There has to be innovation. There has to be things to bring in definition. There has to be excitement brought into a category. There is a reason that the category has been fighting for exposure and growth. Blended Scotch whisky. Scotch whisky is doing very, very well, but it's mostly in the back of single malt because blends remain dull. Blended Scotch whisky is dull, and it is relying far, far too much on brand and story and logos rather than liquid and flavor and word of mouth. Of course, just my opinion. Anthony Lambert is saying, seeing a bottle of Bell's, our famous grouse, always reminds me of childhood Christmases in the 70s. Me too. The only time my parents brought whiskey. I would love you to try those old bottles now. Memories. Sorry, he's saying, I would love to try those old bottles that you can still pick up at auction. 70s grouse, 70s Bell's, very inexpensively. It will have changed in the glass over time, no doubt. But it might be nice for you to use it as a wee bit of a time travel capsule. Falscraft is saying yes. Whoops, it jumped, Falscraft. Good to see you, Klaus. He's saying you're right, the experience does that. However, the unexpected customer is afraid of the high rate percentage. Just the other day overheard folks talk in a supermarket. There is no doubt. There is no doubt. And it helps the profit, as Doc suggested too, when that is out there. If somebody advertised a product at 46% ABV and explained to you that it brought you so much more flavor and nobody could really appreciate or understand or feel the extra added alcohol burn, if that was the marketing campaign, if it helped you slow down and taste the flavor rather than just drink disengaged style, if that was the marketing for drink responsibly, I think we could start to teach people rather than persuade people. Multi-mission, make no mistake, if a law was passed bringing the minimum ABV down to 35%, Diageo Pernod Ricard wouldn't waste a second jumping on the wagon Aquavite. Menno, the only reason we have 40% today is because of legislation. Now, yes, the industry was involved in curating that legislation, but the 40% was the product of a negotiation. Kelter Drama, Gary, good to see you. Just poured an Isle of Skye 8-year-old because you mentioned it. Good for you, Gary. Nice to see you, buddy. Hope you're keeping well. Rick Johnson is saying on my last trip to Scotland, the only Scotch they had on board the plane was Bell's. It was a long flight. Any port in a storm, though, Rick, right? It's still fine. Listen, this is not to have a go at the quality of any whiskies. You know, the definitions in place for Scotch whisky are so robust that even when we talk about these whiskies that it might sound like I'm being dismissive about tonight, that's not the intention. I just think that with very little effort and with some clear messaging and people who care, people who love, and in the right hands, they could be much, much better. I've got a wee bug in tonight. It's meltingly hot in Glasgow the last few days. 2 days ago, it hit nearly 30 degrees here where I live. Yesterday, it was up at 28, 29. Today, 26, 27. It's very warm and sticky in Glasgow. I don't want that to sound like a complaint. We very much enjoy it for a few days. Anyway, while there are... no, I'm not going to make this announcement now when there's so many of you in, because I'm going to wait till I see a name till I make a wee announcement. But what I will do is I'll do a wee bit of housekeeping about the 30th of September. Jimmy Leg is in tonight, and I'm going to talk about this thing that's become, I can't fight it. I can't call it Jimmy Fest because people are just, and they just want to call it LegFest, and that's all it is. But if somebody who decided that they would never make the trip across the Atlantic, Jimmy Leg, he's in tonight, is making that trip across, it is, in his mind, a bucket lister trip for him. I want to use that as the catalyst. Any excuse, honestly speaking. Sorry, Jimmy, but any excuse for us all to get together. 30th of September, I'm available. I've booked time at the Bon Accord for us all to have some space, just to meet at the Bon Accord, open a few bottles together, and to enjoy ourselves. I'll take care of the bottles that will be opened there for that night. You have to come along without bottles. You will be putting money behind the bar at the Bon Accord. That's the idea. They are not charging us anything to use their space. They'll also give us the glassware and let us open 2, 3, 4 bottles to welcome everybody. That is the informal gathering that I'm planning on the 30th of September. That's the thing that we're calling LegFest. It's not a ticketed event. It's very informal, but I'm starting to get a bit nervous about the amount of people that are coming. Some people are traveling some distance for it. So here's what I'm thinking of doing. I'll make an event inside Facebook. Don't panic if you're not inside Facebook. Bear with me. I'll put an event inside Facebook. We'll call it LegFest. We'll release all the details, the times. We'll let everybody know what's happening. And I'll ask you to register on Facebook so that we can have a guess of how many people we're talking about. If you're not on Facebook, please just leave a comment underneath and I'll put a name in for you and against the event. I'll register you so I know. Or one of the other barflies can say, make sure that we have this name included. That's the only, I don't want to make it a ticketed event. I'm not going to manage tickets or anything. I'm not going to make it, it's got to be just an informal gathering, but I do have to, now I'm a wee bit worried about the amount of people that might turn up at the Bon Accord on Saturday the 30th of September. So I need to have some idea of how many folk we're talking about, okay? Fantastic. Famous Grouse pocketed more than 80 million last year. Folk all over the world drink it. Highland Park and Maclean are in it, and Famous Grouse make way more money than them. That's not to be argued with. It's not to diminish the success of Scotch whisky since it was first created by, credited to Andrew Usher back in the mid-19th century. Listen, I'm not having a pop at a category, but I am saying that there is a distinct lack of inventiveness until recent times by smaller organizations, the ones that are agile, the ones that are passionate, the ones that are able to shift, move, and develop. We are the type of people that engage with that type of thing. I'm broadcasting to 350 folk right now. I'm not broadcasting to 3.5 million folk. If I was broadcasting to 3.5 million, then potentially I'd be talking about Famous Grouse and bells and all of these things, and that's what we would be raising in the glass. But we're not. We're here on a Thursday night because we are absolutely in love with whiskey and what it can be. Anyway, let's get the first delicious bottle in front of you. I'll let you know what I'm sipping right now. It's sitting over my shoulder. It's been on the vPub multiple times. It is an absolute stalwart, and it will be on my perma shelf for as long as this is available. Now, I don't know how long this can exist. I don't know how transient this whiskey is going to be, but for now, it seems to be pretty continually available in the UK, and it's getting out there to more markets than just the UK. I don't know how far it's making it, but this is the Thompson Brothers blended Scotch whisky. It's the TB BSW, which I guess is Thompson Brothers / BSW blended Scotch whisky. It's aged for 6 years, and it's presented at 46% ABV. Now, they do tell us that it's non-chill filtered in its natural colour, but as I've mentioned earlier, that's less of an issue when it comes to high grain content or just grain whisky generally. Chill filtration is less of an issue. Malt whisky, chill filtration is an issue. So you will get hazing, you will get cloudiness. If the temperature's cold, if you pour it over ice, if you're sipping it outside and it's cool, whatever, you'll get this cloudiness happening, and some people see that as a fault. But if you present it at 46% ABV, and if it's poured neat at 46% ABV, that's not an issue. 46 plus, it's not an issue. That's the alcohol helps keep those fats and oils in solution. When you reduce it below 46% ABV, it becomes a problem and you need to take action. And that action is chill filtration. Maybe it doesn't have a huge impact on aroma, but my experience over drinking many, many whiskies over many, many years is that I can tell you that for me, it makes a difference to the experience. The majority of the whiskies that I keep and I love and that I've grown to love on my shelf tend to be naturally presented whiskies that are unchill filtered. This tells us that it's unchill filtered. What it doesn't tell us is how much malt is in the bottle. So it could be that they have to keep it at 46 or they have to consider these presentation specs because it's very, very high malt content. Depending on where you look, depending on which rumour on the internet that you read about this whiskey, you can be going from anywhere from 70% malt in this to 99% malt. I really don't know what to believe, but perhaps in the future I could convince Simon or Phil to come on the vPub. They seem to be open to it. They seem to be amicable to such a thing in the future. We just need a good topic to discuss. Maybe they would step forward and be able to kind of hint towards what we've got here. For me, it matters not a jot. What we actually have in the bottle here is a 6-year-old whiskey minimum, potentially older. To me, it tastes older. There's nobody I've poured this for that suddenly turns around and says it tastes young. It tastes very, very well developed. It's super sherried. It's maybe not the type of whiskey that you would be pouring on a summer evening. Did me very well through winter, that's for sure. 46% ABV as well, all natural. £34 a bottle. This is batch 4. So I've had batch 1. I'm pretty sure I've had... I don't even remember checking batch 2 and 3. This is batch 4 that I'm on now. And this bottle over my shoulder here, we're on batch 7, batch 007 already. And for me, the bottles I've had so far, although this one isn't open, have been super consistent, very, very consistent. And if I look at this and I hold it up to the other one, the colour is very, very similar too. So I don't know what stocks Simon and Phil, the Thompson brothers up there in Dornoch, have managed to get their hands on in order to produce a product like this, but I hope that it's deep enough to last a long time. Because what we have here is a fantastic whiskey that is redefining a lot of people's idea of an approachable, drinkable, enjoyable whiskey and everybody's idea of blended Scotch whiskey. This plays very much like malt. It tastes, it feels, everything suggests malt. There's not a lot of... I think it would take somebody way more capable than me to pick this up and say, I'm getting some grain in this. And in fact, when I've used this in blind challenges, you'll have noticed that was never said. I used this at the live blind challenge last year in November in Glasgow. There were 60 people in a room that put that in second place behind Yoichi. Incredible. Ahead of a 33-year-old blended malt, ahead of a very, very well-respected Guardian of Islay. It did fantastically well for £34. Everybody was surprised and shocked. Let me give you another example that surprised and shocked people. Now, I apologise for showing you this right now because quite a few of the whiskies that I'm going to share with you, especially in your market, you might not be able to get a hold of. It's absolutely true for this one, but even in our market, we're not able to get a hold of this anymore. I was looking for this earlier because my bottle's getting a wee bit low here. You spin it round, we're down to about a quarter left, but this is Langstain's Glasshouse. Now you can see that it says blended Scotch whisky in the label, but look above it there, it says made from 100% malted barley. Well, how can that be? Well, if you produce anything through a column still as opposed to malt through a pot still, you have to call it grain whisky. So this is 100% malt made in a pot still and malt made in a column still in order to make this. You don't need many guesses to work out which distillery put this together, a distillery that has both of those available. but it went off. This was under contract for Langstein whiskey, and it seems to be available 1 minute and gone the next. £30 or less a bottle. Fabulous. How fabulous? Well, a fundraiser I held in winter 2021 here had people round the table putting this second, only behind Springbank 18 all night in the lineup. Fraser Richardson, I think. Fraser, are you in tonight? Are you still here? Mentioned to me earlier as we were chatting directly on Patreon, reminded me that the night that happened, everybody ordered a bottle round the table. I would love to see more of this. 46% ABV. There's no age statement on this. It doesn't matter. Flavour tells us everything. Everybody I've poured this for agreed that it was a wonderful whiskey. When I told them they could buy it for less than £30, they get super excited. Suddenly they didn't care that it wasn't a single malt. They didn't care that it was actually a really quite interesting story. That single blend, honestly speaking, from the same distillery, a category that doesn't actually exist. They just cared that they could have delicious, anxiety-free whiskey for less than £30. It doesn't seem to be difficult to do. Do you think anybody was sipping this at 46% and say, oh, it's a bit hot, it's a bit nippy? Now, maybe somebody might pick this up in a shop and look at the ABV and say, oh, and not touch it. But that takes time to change minds. So everything that I'm loving, everything that I enjoy, everything that I recommend is going to end up, as it always does, on the shelf over my shoulder here. Michael Henry's in tonight, so I am going to suggest, I hope I'm not telling tales out of school when I say that the gentleman responsible for making that Glasshouse Blend is here. Good to see you, Michael. Even the Royal Langstains haven't bought any further liquid from us, so not sure what their plans are for the expression. I always got the impression that it was kind of a half-hearted thing. I think there's an opportunity for Loch Lomond to do something very, very similar to that, Michael. Brand it any way you like. Bring us that single blend at 46% ABV. Bring us that fruit fizz and flavour. It's fabulous stuff. Just a suggestion. You know what you're doing. Just a man is saying, I'm guessing Loch Lomond, but I think Ben Nevis could we technically do that too. Definitely Loch Lomond, Justin. Buddy, good to see you in. It was nice to meet you this year too. Jim is saying, with what can be achieved with blends now, why not have more? There's snobbery about single malt, but that was created by books and movies. Yes, we all love single malt, but grain is cheap. I'll go one further than that. It was also created by our palates, Jim. Single malt allowed us to have higher ABV. Single malt allowed us to have flavour forward, flavour focused, fully intact whiskies, natural whiskies, textured whiskies, full mouthfeel, the full experience, single cask, independent bottlers. All of this came along and really showed us how compelling whiskey could be. Ironically, we were enjoying it at higher ABV. That old tale of it has to be 40% ABV in order for it to be accessible is nonsense. What whiskey needs to be in order to be accessible is delicious. The ABV needs to be in check. It needs to be appropriate, absolutely. But it needs to be flavour forward. Michael Henry saying we have done. The recent Loch Lomond single distillery blend was a peated version. More unpeated and peated versions to come in the future. So there we go. As one boat sails, another one comes along. If it's as good as this, if it's at this presentation at this price point, I guarantee that you will have at least one evangelist for the product. Exciting times, and I'm grateful. Thanks for joining us, Michael. Thanks for letting us know. Thanks for teasing us. Let's go back 10 years, 15 years, maybe more. This is not a new thing. Enthusiasts asking for more is not new. There was a bottle, and anybody that's been into whiskey long enough will know the bottle I'm about to hold up. This, famously my famous Bailie Nicol Jarvie, my most favourite branding in whiskey. It's wonderful to read. It's ridiculously silly, whimsical, a kind of almost tongue-in-cheek retro old, but very much in the spirit of old whiskey. Just terrific stuff. Age with honour. And it tells you the story of Rob Roy and the Bailie and fighting off an assailant from the Highlands with a sword, using only his red hot poker from the fire. All this nonsense. But this was celebrated. This Bailie Nicol Jarvie was celebrated and loved, not by people buying supermarket whiskey, but by people who got to love whiskey for flavour. This was loved because of the high malt content. Now, this unfortunately became one of the brands within the Glenmorangie portfolio, and Glenmorangie about maybe 8 years ago, I think, maybe more, killed it off. If you want to pick up a bottle of Bailie Nicol Jarvie now, you can for about £50, £70 on auction. It's not too expensive. It's probably one of the more expensive blends, but it's because it's loved. People are not buying Bailie Nicol Jarvie to put it on a shelf and make it pretty. People are buying Bailie Nicol Jarvie because they miss it and they love it. That tells me that there's a space available for flavour-led blended Scotch whiskies. This is 40% ABV. We need to remember that Bailie Nicol Jarvie is 40% ABV, but it was the high malt content, I think, that sold this, that made it so interesting to people. I would like to see more whiskies flavour-led like that in the future. I was a fan of Bailie Nicol Jarvie. Don't get me wrong. There's not. I could put this alongside a Glencairn 10. I could put this alongside a Lechic Rioja or another fairly inexpensive single malt, and a single malt would just. There's no competition. But I suspect the malts and the whiskies that's in that Bailie Nicol Jarvie, if it was allowed to be a bit more itself, if it was 46% ABV, 48% ABV, I don't know. I suggest that there'd be a lot more engagement in that bottle, and yet it never happened. And it's always made me kind of wonder why. Why is that? Here's another also close, but not quite. This was a very coastal, very peaty whiskey. This is from the Gaelic Whiskey Company. Chevique, again, very traditional, curious, almost tongue-in-cheek presentation. Chevique is, in this context, in a whiskey context, Chevique would mean something along the lines of a dram, a small dram, a pour of whiskey. But this is the Naneelan, which was a very specific kind of more islandy style from the Gaelic Whiskey Company. They put Unchilfiltered on the label here, which is kind of silly because it is mostly grain whiskey. And again, released at 40% ABV. We're seeing a theme here. I've had this whiskey for ages and it's still about half full. It's good. It's a decent blend. It is a decent blend. Justin is saying, I thought you were holding up a bottle of red wine. It does kind of look a bit like red wine. But no, that's blended Scotch whiskey. I didn't pay a lot of money for this. I actually got this at discount on clearance in a supermarket. However, it seems to me that everything about this presentation, everything about the Gaelic Whiskey Company, everything, it's almost like they're primed to just preach to the enthusiast who would take this and shout about it from the rooftops. But they seem obsessed with putting out at 40% ABV because perhaps people are afraid of it. Well, I guarantee you, people are more afraid of not knowing how to pronounce that label. People are more afraid of not knowing what's behind this. And if you want people to read it and engage it, they're not going to stand in a shop and read this tiny, tiny print on the back, as compelling as it may or may not be. You need people to taste it. You need the liquid to be good. You need it to be more compelling. And you need a bit more oomph about it. I guarantee you this bottle wouldn't have been in the collection for as long as it has been if it had better presentation. So what am I talking about? Let's have some examples. What's made me excited about the vPub? What's made me excited about dedicating a vPub to blended Scotch whiskey? Well, it's that Thompson Bros. But you see next to that, there's a full bottle of a brand new whiskey. It's not here in front of me because I've got a half bottle, half finished here in front of me. And this is just out. This is from Adelphi. This is Maclean's Nose blended Scotch whiskey. That's all it says. Maclean's Nose blended Scotch whiskey. However, dig a wee bit deeper here. What do we see? 46% ABV. We see tasting notes on the back, not much more, a QR code. There is promise of a batch number being added to this very subtly in the future. I think it's a good move, a good idea. Yes, we can scan the QR code to work out what the batch is, but I think putting it on the label is better, especially at point of sale, right? I think batches should be added here. This is non-chill filtered in natural colour. It was an omission for them not to put it along with the batch number on this bottle, but that will be fixed for future releases, I'm told. This is blended whiskey. This is what blended whiskey should be. We know from scanning that QR code that it's 70% malt. This is a great start. So we're getting some of that lovely barley, malty mouthfeel and texture. But the 30% grain plays a part too. It brings a kind of nice, brittle fragility to the palate. It brings a sense of things dissolving and the flavors kind of dissolving on our palate in a really quite nice way. There's a huge peaty hit to this. There's a smokiness. There's a outdoor element to things here. There's a greenness. This is a fantastically interesting, complex whiskey that you can sit and relax with, anxiety-free, because it's £32 maximum a bottle. You can pick it up for maybe £1 or £2 less. Presented in the way it should be, with flavour focus first. Not just putting out whiskey, putting out the minimum requirements, making it just whatever it needs to be. They're actually putting out something that people can enjoy, something that people will actually pause and consider sip by sip. Now, yes, at that price point, maybe you feel comfortable to mix it and make cocktails with it. I hope you do. There's no problem with doing that kind of thing. But my focus here for tonight is not mixed drinks. My focus here is the ability for the liquid to stand on its own 2 feet as a neat pour. Let's pour a wee bit of this Maclean's nose. I've got some fantastic, interesting whiskies on paper to open and enjoy and share with you tonight. But I would love them to be anything like as interesting a prospect as that little bottle of blended whiskey. Sept Bang is in. Good to see you, Sept Bang. It's been a wee while. Fantastic to have you in the vPub. He's saying, I have it on good authority. Some Malt Maclean's nose is Springbank. Shh. Okay, we know through scanning the QR code that based on a foundation of grain whiskey, 30% grain, they've added some sherry cask, peated and unpeated West Highland malt whiskey. I wonder what distillery that could be from, if it's a Delphi, right? Some unpeated ex-bourbon cask, West Highland malt whiskey, and then 5 casks on top of that of Campbelltown whiskey. I hear the rumour, Sept Bang, but I would suggest, my gut suggests another distillery, but I don't know that for sure. I just don't know. All that matters is how does it taste. Have it in the glass. Do you also have a bit of a loose cork? No. You can see this is, I can't pull that off with 2 fingers, in fact. No, this is a, Harrow, this is a good strong cork. If you do have a loose cork, and you're planning on keeping a hold of the bottle for a wee while, replace it. Teach my granny how to suck eggs. They ram into Harrow. It's nice to have you in, buddy. Very, very outdoors. This is very damp, very kind of... There's a sense of a fire, the sense of being fireside, but maybe once the fire's been put out. Teeny bit of cool ash. Mineral. I mean, just the mineral side of things here is just all over the place. It's interesting that they've used a kind of lot of sherry casks in here because there's not a lot of cask dominance here at all. Most of the notes you're going to pick out of this is not reliant on wood, I would suggest. Lemon citrus. Powdered sugar. Cheers. Mouthfeel. It's excellent because it arrives full. But like I say, I think it's the grain that brings that kind of nice fizz, that kind of sense of kind of a brittle side to things. As it breaks away and it dissolves, it's not just kind of disappearing like a smooth, flat, linear whiskey. It's not smooth. This is communicative. It's letting you know that it's a different beast. This is the type of blended Scotch whiskey that's going to get a malt enthusiast content, especially when it's 30 quid a bottle. If a tiny producer like Adelphi can do this, what laziness has been happening for decades in Scotch, blended Scotch whiskey? It's just, I mean, like Scotch is the only thing on the planet, right? And where it's, I mean, it's completely the opposite from the Thompson Brothers, where you've got this kind of rich and ripe, rounded, cooked fruit experience from the Thompson Brothers. I would even go as far to say that the Thompson Brothers is smooth by comparison. You've got this bright and vibrant, prickly almost, but not in terms of heat, but in how it interacts. Drying, chalky finish. Wow. Completely different. Literally chalk and cheese. I suspected both of these would do quite well with cheese. And here's another one that I haven't even tried yet, but it's going to be my first uncorking of the evening. Let's get it open. Losing my strength here, I think. Come on. There we go. This is another blended Scotch whiskey. This is not blended malt. Now, this is from a company that we do associate with blended malts through the likes of their Vega, for example, and Sirius blended malts. This is a 10-year-old whiskey, 46.1% ABV, but this is not a staple product. This will be a transient product, but this is part of North Star's Cask 21 outturn. Cask Series 21. Now, this was available in the Good Spirits Company. I happened to be in there quite recently and noticed that they've sold out of it. But, oh, the nose there was sherry forward. I wasn't expecting that. I don't have much intelligence on this one, but it's yet another example of someone bringing out something, putting it in a bottle, presenting it well, putting an age statement on there, a decent ABV on it, and typing on the, or putting in clear print, blended Scotch whiskey, distilled in a mix of distilleries around Scotland. So just getting it across there. Distilled in December 2012, unchill filtered, natural colour. Oh, it does say on the side 2 sherry butts. There you go. Distilled and matured in Scotland. But it's different from the Thompson Brothers. The Thompson Brothers is Thompson Brothers is like a velvet and leather and tobacco pouch type thing. This one, this is more like trifle. There's ripe fruits to this. There's red fruits to this. Even a kind of lightly tropical thing like a lychee, peach melba. So I'm kind of with the trifles and the peach melba thing. I've clearly getting a creaminess from this. Remember, this is a neck pour. I'm always just going on a neck pour on these things. But on the nose, this is ridiculously malty. There's no sense of a kind of sweet sugar, spun sugar, bubble gum. That you might get from the grain. Let's have a wee sip. Cheers, everyone. Okay. Jeez. To put this into context, I've been raving about the non-age statement Maclean's nose at 30 quid. The Thompson Brothers 6-year-old at 33 quid, 34 quid. This North Star 10-year-old blended Scotch whiskey, 46.1%, and the flavour I've just experienced there is £35. There are malt whiskies out there at that price point, but natural malt whiskies, this is the crucial thing. I can think of one or two. Lechic Rioja is one. Occasionally you'll see something like a Glencairn 10 on a special offer or something that's natural. Maybe you'll see Deanston Virgin Oak down there. Bunnahabhain Sturacher. There are not many malt whiskies naturally presented at this price point with this engagement. Not for a minute am I suggesting that you give up your malts and you charge out and buy blended Scotch whiskies. But if we were to discount a whiskey like this based on there is a kind of a linear feeling to this. There's a wee bit of spice and grip on the finish. The arrival and the development, it's maybe not quite as vibrant as some of the malt whiskies that I've just mentioned. But for you to put this in a glass and put it in front of somebody who's supposedly afraid of ABV and pour it alongside something, one of the other ubiquitous blends that's out there, this would absolutely steal the show. To the point that you're willing to pay maybe £10-15 more, I would say so. For a sipping whiskey, I would absolutely say so. This is the type of whiskey that you take along to a pal's house, fire pit, barbecue, whatever it is, gathering round a table, and you just put it on the table and you just sit back and you enjoy each other's company with an absolutely fantastic dram that you know is made with quality and integrity. Excellent £35 whiskey. It's not available everywhere. This has been around for a wee while now. I missed the beat on it. I didn't really talk about it when it first arrived. It's tonight's the night to talk about it. It's still available out there. It's still available for in the order of £35 that it was launched at. Just fantastic liquid. Terrific stuff. Have it in a glass. Do you also have a bit of a loose? I did pick up that one, didn't I? Just as I touched the chat, obviously it jumped there. So I'm trying to remember who it was that said that. Dan Thompson's bought me a dram. Dan, it's a generous dram as well. Got a bottle of the Thompson Brothers, which I opened last week. Very impressed. Fantastic, Dan. Think I'm going to have to get a bottle of the Maclean's Nose now. Anyway, going to have to call it a night. Night Roy and Barflies. Dan, I'm so sorry. I hope I didn't miss you before I picked up that dram. It looks like you've left it a wee minute ago. I would say that if you had the Maclean's Nose and the Thompson Brothers side by side, it's a fantastic compare and contrast. They are nothing alike. They are almost different ends of the spectrum in a lot of ways, but wonderful to have the two of them on the go. And depending on mood, you would find yourself reaching for one or the other. Stefan Novak is in. Good to see you, Stefan. Always a pleasure to welcome you here, buddy. My friend from Germany. Whiskey with Molly saying the new range from Murray McDavid. I picked up the Crofton gear for £34 today. Absolutely fantastic as well. If they're putting out integrity things, natural things, and I noticed a range out from Murray McDavid recently that, you know, just it was a strange. They chose to chill filter and drop the ABV on it. I never understood why. It was a fantastic concept. But there are malts out there. There aren't malt whiskies out there that compete with this on price. I know that they're there, but they're becoming few and far between. Whiskey Weekend Dram is saying, I have a Tomatin replacement cork. Tomatin, I hope it fits, buddy. I hope it fits. Falsgraph is saying, funny, just comparing a blend to a Lechic Rioja. Yeah, I did it recently. I did it with the Noble Rebel, the Smoke Symphony. I compared that to the Lechic Rioja. When it came to intensity and richness, the Lechic Rioja won over, I would say. But the blended malt won out on detail and complexity and interest. It was interesting tasting the two of them together. If you were just after the richest, fullest thing, the Lechic was ahead. But if you were after kind of going, oh, what was that, and going back 2 and 3 times, the Noble Rebel was an interesting pick. Jenny Carlson is in. I don't think people have to choose between malt and blend. They can have and enjoy both. There is an occasion for all whiskies. Jenny, price being no object, you make a perfect point. You absolutely make a perfect point. I have only been sipping whiskey for 18 years now. I'm still a noob compared to a lot of the barflies out there. But I'm finding my breath being taken away now for me to go and replace the whiskies that I love. It used to be that it was only the 12-year-old in North that was really feeling this huge price increase, but we're starting to see the prices creep up right across the board. And all the dynamics that are forcing those price increases are very much around malt whiskey. What I'm trying to do tonight is to loosen things up a little bit and suggest, yes, you're absolutely right. We should be open to all whiskies. That's exactly what I'm focusing on. But when our malts are becoming more and more of a luxury by the day for designs and plans well outside our control, we need to be ready to step up and be open to these things. And honestly, sipping them blind, I think most folk would struggle to work out that this is a blended whiskey because the integrity here, the flavour, the composition that's here is not what we're used to experiencing from blended whiskies. Jenny, it's wonderful to have you in. Great to have you behind the bar. That's very encouraging. Very encouraging. £35 whiskey from North Star. Going to look forward to getting off. That's a good one. That can go. That can go on the shelf. We can't find a rare dogs. I just created my own blend, Hedonism, with a young Zanzibar Bunnahabhain. Fantastic. So Doc's taking a grain whiskey in Hedonism. It's a blended grain. Fantastic blended grain. A bit pricey, honestly, but it's never let me down on flavour. And a young Zanzibar Bunnahabhain. So he's doing it at home. Fantastic fun. Peter Hunt is saying Royal Mail Whiskies gave that Bailie Nicol Jarvie away for nothing back in 2001. If you bought a bottle of the Glenmorangie cask range, oh wow. Free. Insane to think of it now. Always try to pick up a bottle at auction. So there, Peter Hunt has been in the game long enough. He knows the reputation that Bailie Nicol Jarvie had back in the day. I'm going to suggest to you, Peter, that the whiskies that I'm sipping here tonight, Bailie Nicol Jarvie will cost you £50 to £70 at auction. All of the whiskies I have sipped in front of you tonight would take the trousers down of Bailie Nicol Jarvie. No problem. For less money. Yes, if you love Bailie Nicol Jarvie and you want that hit, you want that nostalgia, you want that flavour experience that you once enjoyed, you have to do it. Of course you do. But I'm saying that there are other options, depending on your location. Of course, I have it to caveat all of it. Pedro is saying, good evening, Barflies. Good evening, Aquavita. A bit late, but always nice to catch up. You're never late for the vPub, Pedro, especially when you're tuning in from Brazil, my friend. It's wonderful to have you. Dogs of No Uncles is here saying, Aquavita, I bought the North Star blend in a rush as I thought it was a blended malt and was disappointed when I got home and saw it was a blended scotch. Then I tried it and didn't care. It's great. Pedro, Colin, cheers to you guys. Spot on, Colin. Fantastic to hear that you like it too. I'm grateful because I had also heard that it's very good. And for me to actually finally open the thing and taste that it's very good. Amazing. Let's go in a different direction here briefly on blended whiskey, blended Scotch whiskey, because for a long time now there's been one, and it's been mentioned in the chat tonight, guarantee. I haven't seen it, but I know that some of you would have mentioned this. It's been nominated for Oswas in the past, and it's a different take on blended whiskey. Now it's to celebrate a period, a dark period in the global booze trade times. It's Prohibition now. Prohibition ended up being, overall a very good thing for Scotch whiskey, but generally speaking, it was a bad thing for whiskey, certainly for domestic whiskey in the States, certainly for Irish whiskey, for many other spirits and fermented products as well, not just distilled. You know what I'm opening here? I'm opening a 50% ABV blended Scotch whiskey. This is Cutty Sark's Prohibition edition. I've tried this before. I have to say I love it for a very specific reason. I use Cutty Sark Prohibition for adding oomph and vibrancy to mixed drinks. I have never really got on with this as a sipper. I can enjoy it, but I don't think I would choose to drink it. Now, 50% ABV is fantastic presentation, but but I'm going to suggest to you with a no age statement on this. There's not a lot of integrity outside the ABV being displayed here by the folk behind Cutty Sark. And I would suggest that it is chill filtered, despite the 50% ABV. Do not use higher than 46% ABV of reassurance that something is unchill filtered. Do not. If it says unchill filtered on the label, that's the only assurance that you have. I think this is chill filtered, and I think it is coloured too. But that's me saying I think. This is a wee bit more pleasant on the nose than I remember. There's also a bit of peat smoke about this that I do not remember. This is peated. Full flavoured and challenging. It's telling me to look for cracked black pepper and toffee. Definitely give you the black pepper. Hints of vanilla. Super smooth finish. It's promising a super smooth finish. No, it actually says on the label, look at this, Roy, you should read the label before you spout your mouth off. Thanks to being non-chill filtered and aged in hand-selected American oak casks. So it tells us on the label so we can take peace of mind that it is chill filtered. There we go. I take it back. The toffee reveals itself there. Absolutely toffee, absolutely vanilla. Very American oak cask type profile. Mid-development there. There is spice there. There's a bit of chili. Black pepper is absolutely prominent. Slightly thinner mouthfeel, despite that higher ABV, despite the reassurance of being non-chill filtered. A little bit thinner, but not so different. Fairly short finish. Go back in for another wee top up. I made a mistake. I thought I would be leaving space and keeping the Prohibition down here. I didn't think it was going to make it up there. But this is remarkably full and warming compared to what I remember. I remember this young, punchy, jaggy, uncouth experience that I had the last time I had a glass of this. That's a change. Is it me that's changed? Is it the whiskey? I'm enjoying it tonight. Maybe it's just because I'm here and hanging out with you. Maybe it's because of the whiskies I'm sipping it in contrast with. Maybe the last time I had this, I was sipping it against a punchy, full-bodied malt. I don't know. This is good. Surprised that this is good. I'm going to give you the kicker for the biggest surprise. I paid £25 for this. For a 70 cl bottle of 50% ABV whiskey, Scotch whiskey. It says blended on the label. Doesn't give us an age statement, but it does reassure us that it's unchill filtered. Absolutely cracking. That's not the first time this year I've had to bite my tongue and eat my words. Justin Sinakroviti, this little snippet will be used by some to show that you can't tell the difference. I don't mind at all, Justin. Rob Halford is saying, you have changed, or have you changed? He's suggesting, well, maybe it's not that I've changed or the whiskey's changed, but the moment has certainly changed. The environment has changed. The things I'm sipping it in contrast with has certainly changed. I remember this being young and jaggy and that is genuinely surprising. Maybe it's just a good night to be sipping whiskey. I will go one further than that. It's certainly one that would do okay on a summer evening as well, a warm and sticky evening like tonight. And I'd still be comfortable using it to give that power and flavour and oomph to those mixed drinks I was talking about in the past. That's incredible, I have to say. I didn't think it'd be going up there, but it's going up on the shelf. £25. Excellent. Fantastic. Whiskey with Molly Benison. Aquavita has admitted he was wrong about Prohibition. 1-0 to Whiskey with Molly and Hell's Wood. I know that Helen is. I'm glad to hear that you're a fan too, Ben. Fantastic. Brilliant stuff. It's always a bi-directional thing. I learn and I listen to you just as much. And it should be that way as well. Graham Young is saying that would just mean it's a Thursday Aquavita. Thanks, Graham. Wonderful to see you in. Brilliant stuff. I've got some amazing, inexpensive, delicious, anxiety-free whiskies in front of me. I really have. And here's another one. I'm not going to open this one tonight because I've got 2 clean glasses left, and that's it. My limit for the night is 2 more. And I've got 3 bottles to share with you. And I have tried this one before. I do have a fairly vivid memory of it that's probably going to be quite different if I open it and enjoy it tonight. But I'm going to leave it intact because the other 2 are, I think, more interesting, and I've been keen to try them for a wee bit longer. Anyway, this is another product from North Star. Bit of a mystery to this one. Maybe you can help me answer it. But this is the Full, which is a blended Scotch whiskey from North Star. If we can hold this up so that it focuses. Come on. No, my camera doesn't want to focus on the Full, just the usual Full. Okay, it's focused now. But this is interesting because this is taking that concept of Prohibition and bringing us that ABV element even more concentrated. This is 57.3% ABV. Where I'm at a loss to explain this one, though, is on the back. And I've not heard any chatter about this whatsoever. I'm amazed no one's spoken about this. But if you can see there, it talks about 20% malt and 80% grain. That's fantastic to see. But I don't know if it does say on the back. Yes, you can see. It says matured for 8 years in hogsheads between 2016 and 2022. Now, I'll admit, maths was not my strong point when I was at school. But I am pretty sure you cannot squeeze 8 years between 2016 and 2022. So I'm not sure what's going on there. I think it's a mistake in some regard. Either this is not an 8-year-old, it's a 6-year-old whiskey, which I think is more likely, or it's an 8-year-old whiskey and perhaps it was 2014 to 2022 or something like that. I don't know, unless I'm just being utterly stupid and I'm going to... but it's a weird thing on the label here. This is part of... it looks like it's going to be like a Taro series. Or that would be amazing if North Star continued to make a series out of this. High ABV, cask strength style ABV blended Scotch whiskey to redefine flavour, redefine how we feel about it. Everything's going orange here. I wonder what I'm making a mistake with. Jimmy Legacy, when I had it, I describe it as hot and gingery aquavita. That was a few years ago. Maybe it's changed. I'm pretty sure Jimmy's talking about the Prohibition. Jimmy, your experience and mine is the same. And I will caveat it with saying that I'm 4 drams in tonight and it's a neck pour. My experience and my memory of Prohibition was hot and gingery, absolutely, but that's not what's in this glass tonight. There is ginger here. There's a wee bit of heat. The black pepper thing is there. Jimmy, you and I could rock ourselves content on a rocking chair somewhere with a bottle of that Prohibition and be very, very content. throw away the cork. Just no problem. Just sometimes it needs to be the moment. Sometimes you just need to be a wee bit more open-minded. Sometimes going in with an expectation, it can change your mind. Sometimes if you sip it blind, it can define it. Tonight, like I said to you, I have to admit, I didn't expect to put that on the shelf over my shoulder. I should be celebrating and shouting that I can put a £25 bottle of whiskey over there. It's tremendous. Ian Bruce is saying, right, it's maybe a sense of place that's allowing the Cutty Sark to sail on the top shelf. Nice one, Ian. Superb. Rick Johnson is saying math. I know, right, Rick? And Justin Wan is saying general relativity. Brilliant. And Falscraft is saying a fool, the sipper who falls for the age statement. Oh, I wonder if it was deliberate. I don't think so. It's certainly flouting SWA regulations. Peter Hunt is saying the grain is North British and the malt in it was from Maclean and Glenlivet. But so Maclean and Glenlivet, that's an interesting mix there. Good intelligence as well, Peter. Talking about the full, no doubt. I'm going to keep the full because I haven't tried it. I'm going to put it to the side because the interesting thing about the full, I'll just double check. Yes, despite the 57.3% ABV, and it doesn't matter whether the age statement is 6 years old or 8 years old, right? Unchilfiltered. This is full integrity whiskey. 57.3% ABV and 30 quid. It doesn't have to do much to find a place in our hearts, surely. I know you're going to be disappointed with me that I'm not opening it tonight, but maybe there'll be a reason or something in the vPub in the future that I can open that for. Or maybe it'll just be a casual passing remark and I can share it with you. But there are two whiskies here that I do want to spend a bit of time on. And I realise that I've been banging my gums for an hour and 20 minutes about blended whiskey. Who'd have thought it? And the two whiskies that I'm probably most excited about, I've kept till the end. We're only just getting round to them just now. Peter Lacey and Aquavitae here. Tell you what I'm going to do, Peter. I am going to open this bottle to raise a glass to you, my friend. Colin Buchanan's bought me a dram to say cheers, Roy. I said, is it Campbelltown when my dad gave me a blind Maclean's nose? Felt daft at the reveal. Not so much now I hear the contents. I don't feel daft because Is It Campbelltown was probably a very positive response from you, Colin, right? That's terrific. And it's I hope that that's an endorsement for a £30 bottle of whiskey, right? Maclean's nose. I'm opening something that's quite pricey at first approach, but bear with me. I'm uncorking this for a very special reason, for a very special barfly. Peter Lee has only been around the barflies for a couple of years. It feels like he's always been here now, but checking back, he's only been here for a couple of years. If you're on the Facebook group, he's super active on the Facebook group. You can't be in the Aquavitae Barflies Facebook group and not know who Peter Lee is. When he first came onto the scene, we were all thinking that he was a bragger and a collector, and we weren't very, very sure. And then he quickly demonstrated how utterly generous and welcoming and kind he was, that he was welcoming people whether he had met them, spoken to them or not. He was travelling into Glasgow to meet with people. His Malt Mondays with his wife Denise has become famous throughout the barfly community. We realised that, he might be collecting whiskey, but what he's actually doing is getting a buzz out of being part of the whiskey community and loving it. And he's an absolute remarkable ambassador for everything that we love about whiskey. I've not known generosity like this man can deliver, whether it's finding bottles, exchanging samples, giving up his time, driving people home. It's incredible. It's incredible to witness. It's just nuts. It should be, people like Peter Lee are the people that we should strive to emulate. Not judge, get to know. Anyway, it's his 50th birthday, and I want to raise a glass for a very special barfly and somebody that has taught me. I've spoken to Peter and I've heard about his challenges in life, and I've heard about his challenges recently this year, and he's always got a smile and he's always got time and he's always utterly generous. Peter, my friend, many happy returns to you, you absolute star. Cheers, Peter Lee. Jenny Carlson is saying Peter Lee is also an amazing baker. You have tasted the Peter Lee banana loaf. Jenny, that is a very rare thing indeed. Sandro Fazzolari saying it's 16 to 22 in sherry butts, but an additional 2 years in something else. And its component parts, just an idea. Oh, so what we're talking about is, there could be something in that, Sandro. I like it. There may not be a mistake there. They may need to clarify it a wee bit more. Maclean Final Rare. Doc is celebrating Peter. Fernando is saying lovely. Peter Lee is putting out Love Hearts Jimmy Legacy saying you may have to Spirit Aquavite. I have a scallop risotto coming. That's okay if you leave a wee bit early, Jimmy. You can miss the quiz tonight, buddy. Justin Mann is saying Peter Lee is an absolute star. Jerry Miller is saying, and if you visit Glasgow, you can't not meet him. He's the best. Ian Bruce is saying a great 8 months to grow and learn. Thanks, Barflies. Thank you, Ian, for being a member of this community. Terrific stuff. I hope everybody is raising a glass for Peter Lee. What did you toast Peter Lee with? Martin Fielder. Good to see you, Martin. Good to see you, buddy. I opened the bottle that I told you I was very, very intrigued about. I had not bought this because I am flawed. I am the same as you. We judge. We're just like almost on theme, right? We judge, don't we? And we often think from an emotional point of view. And I saw a blended Scotch whiskey for £60 and said, no, not a chance. Utter nonsense. Craziness, right? What I actually see now that I look at this is a very malt forward, when you do a bit of research, 15-year-old whiskey at 46% ABV, full integrity presentation, unchilfiltered natural colour. It tells us on the label. It tells us on the box as well. This is from Billy Walker. This is Billy Walker's blended Scotch, White Heather, 15 years old, £59.60. That's expensive for a blend. Until you consider that it's 15-year-old Scotch whiskey. Now, I know you'll argue, you look for Roy, for £45 or less, I can pick up Johnny Walker, 15 green label. Last green label, I've mentioned earlier in the vPub that I had 15 years old, was one of the flattest whiskies. So disappointed after great experiences over the years with green label. The bottle's here, in case I need to double check. I had a wee sip out of it earlier, and I'm afraid it's very similar. Might just be this batch, matters not. This is 15-year-old whiskey that's different from that Johnny Walker. Yes, this is blended Scotch, that's blended malt. This is full integrity, unchilfiltered. It's natural whiskey. It's not coloured. And I would suggest to you that if I know Billy Walker, he might even be up to his old tricks and might be adding something a wee bit older to this. But he owns Glenallachie, so it makes a lot of sense to me that a lot of the malt in this blended whiskey will be Glenallachie. I had a wee sip of it, but I was raising a glass to Peter and I didn't really pay any attention. This is kind of similar on the nose to our Thompson Brothers. No, the Thompson Brothers has got a wee bit more spice to it. This is more rounded. This is more kind of refined. This is more jammy and fruity. Might I even suggest a little bit more kind of softer. Anyway, cheers, Peter Lee. This is what I raised. Okay. Paying a bit of attention this time. This is a much cleaner, smoother. This is less communicative. This is very refined, very easy drinking. This is almost too easy to drink. It's just kind of... I don't know how much definition I'm picking up here. I'm not suggesting it's simplistic, but it's simpler. Neck pour, nothing to judge. Initial impressions only. Okay, so a wee bit of wee bit of age, a wee bit of dunnage, a wee bit of tobacco, a wee bit of kind of bookstore Sweden leather type note. There is age here. There's a bit of maturity. There's a bit of age. But it's soft. It's the whole experience is soft. Rather than the black pepper that we were getting from the Prohibition here, we've got the gentlest, softest of kind of bacon spice. Not a lot of fruit. Again, it's very sherry forward. Sherry cask. Sweet, soft, fruity, easy sherry cask. American oak sherry cask rather than a more kind of spiced, tannic European oak. Interesting whiskey. Interesting that we need to look at this as a 15-year-old Scotch whiskey and then see, oh, £60. Sipping this, do you know what I would have to do? I would have to put this up against another 15-year-old at £60 at Speyburn, one of my favourite whiskies. Sip them side by side and see how it gets on. I would suggest that maybe the Speyburn's a bit more dense than this, but that's not to take anything away from it. If you took this bottle along to a friend and you wanted to make them feel a wee bit special or treat them and say, here's a 15-year-old Scotch whiskey for you, I think you might enjoy this. I think that they would lap this up. Fully flavoured. Fruity in the sense of raisin. Prune. Slightly syrupy. Very, very good. Very, very good. Interesting. What did you toast Peter Lee? Martin Fielder, there you go. That's what I toasted him with. Jimmy's bought me a generous dram. Peter Lee is only collecting whiskey so he can give it away to people he barely knows. He's a complete champion. We're going to have some kind of fun in September. The stories of the generosity from Peter that I've heard over the months, some of them flabbergast me. Because some of it he's doing in a very contrived, sneaky, behind-the-scenes way to surprise and delight people. And when you hear about how he's thinking about people and how he's obviously taking what he's enjoyed and what he's connected with and loved. And he's not alone in this. There's millions of you guys get this. But he's taken what he's enjoyed from the whiskey community and deciding to pay it forward and how he's doing it. It's just every time you hear a new story. Good morning to your lovely self, says Glenn Duncan. Just switch on to the vPub. Good morning, all barflies. Glenn Duncan is obviously in Australia. Good morning to you, Glenn. Welcome in, my friend. I hope life is good in the upside down. I know it's the middle of your winter, in the middle of our summer. Cheers, Glenn. It's nice to have you in. And Jimmy, you star. Thank you for the kind words for Peter and the generous dram to me. Jan dramming around. Good to see you. Cracking lineup of blends you're pulling out. All great, but the White Heather 15 blew my socks off back in 2022. Had to get a bottle. I wonder if you were initially put off by blended Scotch. It's £59-60. And then you taste it and you get this really, really elegant, rounded, clearly mature whiskey. At £59-60, it has to work a wee bit harder. But we should be a bit more open-minded. It's 15-year-old whiskey. Right? I think a lot of it is with us. I paid $80, said Martin Fielder. Sorry, I missed Andy Cross. I wanted to pick you up, Andy. Good to see you in. Hi, all. Apologies for being late. Live been at the Springbank tasting in Manchester tonight. Fantastic drams, Andy. You never need to apologise for being late at vPub. Certainly not if you've been at Springbank night. Wonderful to welcome you in. And Martin, sorry, I'm getting to you now. Said I paid $80 for my bottle of White Heather 15 in Texas. Martin, what do you think of it? Have you had your face in it yet? Did you enjoy it? It's definitely dark, like 15 years. Any sherry in there? I think there's definitely sherry in there. But if there's a lot of Glenallachie in there, they're putting their inherited Glenallachie stock. Certainly the stuff that's going to be 15 years and above, and pretty active casks. They've re-racked it into casks. We can see even a few weeks ago on the vPub, I pulled out the Glenallachie 12, ridiculously dark whiskey. And Eamon Karsten is here. Good to see you, buddy. He's saying that the Whiteheather 15 also said to have a touch of smoke. Never found that one, to be honest. What I would suggest is that maybe certainly a wee bit of savoury in it. I don't know if it's coming across as smoke. Is that what we would do is maybe cover off the empty glass, and then at the end of the night, just sniff the empty glass, take the cover off and sniff. And if there's smoke there, that's when it'll betray that it was present or not. Good to see you, MM Karsten. Inverurie Whiskey Shop, good to see you. That's Mike, I think. He's saying we've had a lot of customers preferring the 15 over the 21-year-old. Expression of Billy Walker's Whiteheather. Have you experienced both? No, I have not even had a dram of the 21-year-old. So that would be an interesting side-by-side. I have to say, this one is, I think it's endeared itself to me a little bit. Let me put it this way. I am not disappointed in any way that I spent £59 on this whiskey. Especially after waiting so long to do so. Rick Johnson is saying, have you compared it to 21? Exact same question, Rick. I hope I've answered. No, absolutely I haven't. And Falscraft is saying, comparing the one blend I have here at the moment to various single malts result quality rules, not production method. I think that may be our takeaway. Just a wee bit too early, class. I'm going to finish. I'm uncovering tremendous whiskies. Over the course of this week, I have had less to drink than I've had in, well, years probably. I'm trying to lose some. I tried to put on remember the T-shirts I used to wear? That wasn't a polo shirt. It's very warm in Glasgow, and I tried to put on my T-shirt tonight, and it's not. I'm a medium. I've always been a medium. I am not going to a large for two reasons. I just refuse to be a large on a T-shirt. And the second reason is I don't have any large T-shirts in stock. So I don't think I do. I certainly am not going to take anything from stock. So the only option is to take action. So I've been walking every day. I've been making sure I walk. My knee isn't going to let me run quite yet again. So I've been walking. I've been walking 5K minimum every day. I didn't do that today because we had other things on. And after Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 3 days of it, I think my body was telling me I needed a wee bit of a rest. It also meant that I was being very deliberate about what I did pour. So the beer has gone out the window. I've had 2 beers in the last 5-6 days, just not touching it. But what it has meant is that when I am reaching for that whiskey, it is so much more profound. I don't know if it's because I'm moving and exercising again or getting out there or being busy, but I am finding that being active and being present and being mindful and being, I think I kind of lost a lot of appreciation. Whiskey has repeatedly had to teach me about the benefits of slowing down, right? So yes, I think I've enjoyed all of the whiskies tonight a wee bit more because of just being away from it and being excited to be back in and enjoying it again. Harrow is saying, welcome to Large Aquavite, but good luck with your goals. I love walking. I'm enjoying it too. The noisy roads, I live in the city, obviously. The noisy roads are not so good, but when you get off to the wee kind of suburban and the quieter roads and things, you lift your head and you look and you see the distance and you take in a wee bit of life. It's a big difference. It doesn't matter whether you walk 5 minutes, 50 minutes, or 150 minutes. Just get out and about if you can. The Hogshead is saying blended malts are fantastic, but blended scotch is not for me. All the grain whiskey really stands out and not in a good way. Alex, you need to be here with me tonight. These are my words coming out of my mouth a few years ago. No question. It was grain that was putting me off. And I think the grain was putting me off because of the way that everything had been handled, and also a lot to do with the 40% ABV. There is not a whiskey I've had tonight that I would not want to have on the shelf, which is a ridiculous claim, and I've not even got to the one I'm most excited about. Whiskey Wookie is saying, good to see you. He's saying, it's not the dram adding the shirt size. no carbs, low to no calories in whiskey. I know, but I think what is, I know it's not, it's the beer, it's the food, it's the munch, it's the whiskey in itself doesn't really add any calories, but I think it does often put you in a, before you go to bed, you might have a snack or something, or I think whiskey's very good at helping you to be a wee bit more mindful. And when you're a wee bit more mindful, I think I don't want to suggest that you need to have more whiskey in order to be more mindful. I think you need to be more mindful in order to enjoy the whiskey you have. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The carb thing is an issue, especially as you get older. I was blend averse, says Dribs and Drams. Good to see you in. Until I discovered Compass Box. Now I'm way more experimental. Good. Mostly blended malts. What we're focusing on tonight is blended scotch. But absolutely. Tommy Almaricina, I went to XXL a few years ago. Keep fighting. Yeah, cheers to that, Tom. Fantastic. Glenn Duncan saying, did Aquavita just fat shame us large t-shirt wearers? Lol, velvet backhander. Sorry, buddy, that was certainly not the intention. I was speaking very, very personally. Fat shaming. Ian Bruce is saying being active really makes our brains and all our sensory parts of the body. Oh wow. Just as it jumps, sorry, Ian. Become active and more in tune. So here we go. I'm going to struggle with this. This is the last one I'm going to open tonight. I may need to find an implement to get into it though, because it's one of these cellophane wrapped ones. I'm going to uncork this. I certainly avoided these when they first arrived. Turntable, it's a project by Ali and Gordon Stevenson, two brothers who'd been in the whiskey industry for quite a long time, always had desires to kind of do their own project. Eventually they got together to do it, and this is what they've created. Turntable is the brand. Turntable Blending House. This is the 2023 collection. It was track 1, track 2, and track 3. The one I have here in front of me is track 3, which is called Purple Haze. It's got nothing to do with me being a Jimi Hendrix fan or anything of the sort. The reason I picked this one is I looked at the 3 that were available. And what I actually wanted was a kind of fruit pop. I wanted a bourbon, ex-bourbon refill, first fill and refill kind of fruit explosion blend. That's what I was after, but none of the track 1, 2, or 3 are those. Track 1 is called Joy, Discovery, and Invention from memory. And there's a wee bit of wine cask in there. There's a wee bit of something else. I'm going to need a blade to get into this thing. My goodness. Is there a pull tab on it? Why does it have to be so fiddly? Am I going to have to pull up my back later screen and get something sharp into this? Come on, there's always something sharp around, isn't there? Yeah, there's always a pen knife. Although it is quite stubborn cellophane. This is worse than when I have a brittle cork. Go south on me. We're getting there. We're in. So it certainly makes you work to get into the liquid. So Joy, Discovery, Invention was track 1. Track 2 is Firestarter, which suggests to me that it's going to be PT forward. And this one is called Purple Haze. And the cool thing about this is that it tells us on the back. I mean, if you talk about transparency, let's just put the cork on the top a wee bit in case I spill it. Look at the transparency on the back here. This is quite amazing. 42% Craig Ellachie, 44% Balmainac. Now, we don't get to drink much Balmainac, do we? 14% Invergordon. Do you notice a theme here? Maybe the Thompson Brothers is malt heavy. Certainly Maclean's Nose is 70% 30 in the favour of malt. This turntable is 14% grain. 14% Invergordon. Now, the Craig Ellachie is from an Oloroso butt. The Balmainac is from PX, Pedro Jimenez. And the Invergordon is just ex-sherry. So I guess it's going to be grain whiskey. So maybe the cask, this the sherry from the cask isn't specified, no matter. Last of the clean glasses tonight. This will glug because it's got quite a shoulder on it. Oh, look at the colour of that. Thought it was only dark because of how short and stubby it was, but now it's in the glass. Really quite a russet red dark colour here. Now, how can we celebrate the colour on this? Well, because they tell us on the box and the bottle that it is natural colour and non-chill filtered. At 46% ABV as well, we have an integrity bottling. They can't put the ages of those components on the label because if they did, they would get a bit of trouble from SWA, which is bloody frustrating, but it is what it is. I think often the legislation there serves nah, I don't want to get controversial, not when I've had such a nice time tonight, but yes, let's say it serves certain parts of the industry more than it does the protection of Scotch whisky. Most of what the SWA does is rock solid and commendable. Some of the things is a wee bit debatable. This has got a really full nose. It's got a very sweet nose. This is just a big dollop of sweet treacle. This is this is winter dramming here. I shouldn't be having this at the height of summer. This is kind of a big, rich post-dinner cooked fruits. You know, that kind of toffiness that you get from dates. Rich, wet, moist tobacco. Wee bit of ginger, brighter notes, green, wee bit green, not minty, maybe a wee bit minty. Remarkably easy to get your nose right into. Missed a dram, I don't want to miss that, especially if it's somebody that's saying goodnight. It's from Ian Bruce. He's saying, another fantastic topic tonight and a great chat to all the barflies whilst I enjoy my last vPub in the Northern Hemisphere with a dram in hand. Be tuning in live as much as possible from Australia. Ian, have I missed you visiting here? Have you been in and I didn't get a chance to miss you? I didn't get a chance to meet you. Could that be possible? You're buying me a dram in sterling on your way to Australia. Ian, thank you very much for the generous dram and the safe travels wherever you're headed, buddy. Maybe we'll get to raise a dram sometime. Let's go in and see what this is like. Oh, wow. This is unlike anything I've sipped tonight. This is not the same theme. This is completely different. This is called Purple Haze, and I taste colour, I really do. But for me, this is red. Very red. So I was getting a green note on the nose, but it's coming across like a kind of fresh berry thing, like raspberry, strawberry. There's a sense of licking the red glazed toffee from a toffee apple, or these big stupid candy dummies that we often talk about, almost like barley sugar candy. This is vivid. So this is most of the blends that we've had tonight they're kind of very, very together, very, with the exception of Maclean's nose, that's quite defined, I would say. But, Thompson Brothers, the White Heather, the North Star even, maybe sherry driven, but very, very together, very smooth, very refined, very gloopy and accessible and round. And this is not, this is very sharp and firm and this is, yeah, it's defined and red, fresher, brighter. There's no age statement on this. We don't know what the ages are. It's frustrating that we don't know what the ages are. I do not have any intelligence on it. The problem with this, and the reason I held off, is that it was £70. £70 is a lot of money to ask for a bottle of whiskey, regardless of what it is. £70 to ask for a bottle of non-age statement blended whiskey is a big ask. But I was curious from the outset. I genuinely was curious. And as time went on, we should have the Joy, Discovery, and Invention, should have the Fire Starter, should have the Purple Haze. What should I go for? I'm not buying all three, 200 quid and 3 bottles of whiskey. Eventually, I just went with my gut, because I asked for all the opinions, all the feedback I had on this range, by the way, were positive. But I went with my own gut. And in the absence of a bourbon fruit burst, ex-bourbon matured fruit burst, I just went with this one called Purple Haze. And I have to say, I didn't want to have all of this to celebrate. I wanted to be very discerning and just pick a few. But I have to say, this is 70 quid's worth of whiskey, and it's bizarrely weighty. There's in the development, there's something almost odd, and yet Moorish is just kind of, you can, again, it's one of those things that you can, when whiskey competes for your attention, the company that you're with, hopefully you're going to be sipping this with other whiskey geeks, because mid-palate, there's this kind of firmness, so Balmainach, okay, we know about Balmainach, okay? Craigellachie, we know about Craigellachie. Interestingly, those two malt distilleries are both weighty, quite robust malts. Both of them, Balmainach is worm tub. Balmainach, I'm certain, is worm tub. I'm convinced, I'm absolutely certain it's worm tub. So Craigellachie, worm tub, Balmainach, worm tub, and only 14% Invergordon. Only 14% grain whiskey. This is cracking whiskey. Cracking whiskey. On paper, this does not justify £70. I don't know how easy it is for me to recommend. I don't. Because I don't know how much £70 means to you. But if £70 is something that you spend on bottles of whiskey and you're comfortable with it, there is no way you would spend £70 on this and say, no, it's not worth £70. If you could get over the fact that what you're sipping is something that's been created rather than something that is. Aye. That is an excellent dram. In fact, if I was to go back and pour another one and just have one more tonight, I've put that annoyingly out of reach. I have to always remember to be open-minded. Graham Young has bought me a dram to say blends for me. blends for me have their days, just not for me today. Did manage a nice Lechic from and a nice Ardamorchan, a Peter Lee gift no less. Cheers, my friends, and again, happy 50th to Peter. Cheers to you, Graham, for your generous dram. And listen, you don't have to ever sip on theme in the vPub, as long as you're enjoying yourself and enjoying your fellow barflies, and I know you do. Cheers, Graham. But I'll go one further than that. Graham's in Canada, and I know that a lot of the whiskies I've shared with you tonight are they're not parochial, you know, they're not just for me and my pals, or they are very domestic right now. Most of these, the Maclean's nose will make its way out to you. Thompson Brothers 6-year-old will make its way out to export markets. The Prohibition is available everywhere. There are whiskies here that you can buy, but generally this Billy Walker White Heather, maybe in North America, maybe some places in Europe, I don't know how widely distributed it is. The Turntable is going to be very local. There are whiskies here that it might be difficult. Jimmy Legg, Graham Young, Gino Camo, so many of you that struggle to get a hold of. It's not why I talked about this topic tonight. All I have done is sit in front of you and sip whiskies that has reaffirmed my idea that the future is bright for us. Maybe not if we hang our jacket on the peg of single malt. That might not be the way to go, because single malt for the short term, for the foreseeable future, is going to remain continually challenged by the stupidity that is happening in the background. Restriction of casks, cask investment, all of this is going to filter through to our enjoyment. It's going to affect how we enjoy single malt going forward. It really is. But there's millions of whiskey. And I don't just mean there's millions of whiskey being produced from all over the world. I mean there's millions of whiskey in Scotland too. More whiskey than we've ever had. And if you put it in the hands of capable folk who are able to put things like this together, maybe they're not able to tell us exactly how they made it. Maybe they don't want to. And even if they did, they're not allowed to. If we talk about a sense of place, connecting with an individual experience or whatever, this is very much the product of a single country. And it's absolutely delicious. I have absolutely drained that dram in that time. It's just fantastic. Does that mean I'm going to go out and buy the Firestarter on the other one? Okay, no, maybe not. But I'm certainly going to sit, understanding how this develops over the shoulder, how it develops through the bottle, and how I got on with what is essentially a £70. Probably the most money I've ever spent on blended whiskey that isn't an antique. I've got old antique Johnny Walkers and things that I've maybe spent a bit more on, but I guarantee you I'll get more pleasure out of this bottle of Turntable than I will from any of those antique Johnny Walkers. There you go. Take from that what you will. Hellswood is saying, value for money Aquavitae is this new crop of both blended whiskey and blended malts with such high quality, and surely that's a win for the whiskey lovers. Aye, Helen, as long as we stay open-minded. Terrific stuff. Rob Smith is saying, gonna need a bigger shelf. And Falscraft is saying, you're right, Rob. Falscraft is saying, come on, these days anything under €100, dollars, pounds is not too bad, is it? But that's the way, Klaus, isn't it the way that we're being tenderized to spend more and more and more? I want to fight that. I want to see what we can get for spending less. And it's an interesting point you make, because if I was to pour this for somebody blind and put it in front of them and say, how much do you think you're going to have to spend to taste this again? I wonder how much they would say. I don't want to pick on any particular brand, but I dread to think how much you would have to spend in Johnny Walker's camp in order to get a delicious flavour experience, a texture experience, a finish like this. Mike Molasses say, no matter how tenderized that I might become to prices, my wife keeps me grounded. We all need a wife, don't we, Mike? Good to see you, buddy. And Gino is here. Good night, folks. Heading out early this evening. Good luck with the quiz. Have a good week, Roy. Gino, it's brilliant to have had you in once more. And Helen, I did pick up your comment, didn't I? I did. Listen, there is a quiz at the end tonight. I am way, way late. 2 hours, just me banging on about blended whiskey. I wonder how well this vPub will do on views. Thanks to everybody that picks it up live, of course, but thanks to all of you who pick it up on the replay. Hopefully I've done my housework and you do have timestamps to keep up with this throughout tonight. It is a wee bit of a monologue and I do enjoy it. I hope you do too. Justin One is saying another vPub that I found surprisingly enjoyable, absolute stunner of a session. Hit the thumbs up, barflies. Aye, 146 likes. Justin, thank you for reminding everybody. I'm going to like my own vPub tonight. I am the 148th thumbs up. Why is that important? Because people need it for reassurance that when they see a 2.5 hour long session and wonder what the hell it's all about, they need to be reassured that there are enough people who've put the thumbs up to make it worthy of their attention. The quiz at the end tonight I'm going to predict that we will see 10 out of 10s tonight. There is a theme tonight. It might not necessarily be exactly on the theme that we've discussed, but it will be interesting to see if you can pick it up and play along. Remember, the quiz at the end is always multiple choice. You participate at your own pace. You only share your score if you want to. Pass mark is only 5 out of 10. Even if a chimpanzee was throwing darts, they would score 3 out of 10. It's just for good fun. And even if you don't do very, very well, hopefully you take something away and you enjoy it and you learn something out of it. Rob Smith is saying, I predict I will get 1 out of 10. Rob, if you're honest with me, I predict you will get a pass mark tonight, Rob. Let's see how that goes. Bud Jenkins is saying, Aquavita, this has been a good session and it gives me hope. Can't get these in the USA yet, but it gives hope of things that are coming in the industry. We need an alternative to the high prices. What we need, Bud, to summarize tonight, is we need people to look at blended whiskey as a category and realize that it's literally abused right now. It is neglected, abused, ignored. It's everything. If you walk to the blended section on your supermarket of Scotch whiskies, in order for you to find something that's presented above 40% ABV is next to impossible, and that in itself should tell you all you need to know. It does not need to be like that. ABV is not a barrier of entry. Crappy flavor is. Integrity, flavor first, quality. I know that these compromise profit. I know that it's a challenge. I know we need to shout and we need to fight. But as long as we have these flavors sitting on our palate, as long as we have this community willing to do so, we will fight. And companies will, it won't be the big players. It won't be the corporates. It won't be the ones that rely on brand and messaging and story, however contrived they may be. It won't be those that come and rescue us. It'll be the new players. It'll be the people with ideas and innovation and above everything, passion. That's what's going to change things. Rick Johnson is saying, oh, now I'm competing against a monkey. Aren't we always, Rick? Carl Crafts is saying, excited to see the combination of value for money, even at the lower end of the fiscal scale mesh, with proper, drinkable, Moorish liquid. Thanks for a great vPub. Thanks for enjoying and participating in the vPub, Carl. Nice to have you, buddy. Sugar Kitty is saying, Cy Roy always says there are going to be a ton of 10s. I think there won't be a ton of 10s tonight, but there may be some. Let's add this to the stream. Let's change it to that wee view. Let's get rid of that distracting background and let's focus on seeing how many people, Rick, Sugar Kitty, we can get beyond. And Rob Smith, was it Rob Smith predicting he would only get a 1 out of 10? We can get beyond the pass mark tonight. Good luck, everyone. Remember, it's always multiple choice. You don't need to share your score if you don't want to. Question 1. Which of these distilleries might we associate with the Ballantine's blended Scotch? going to give you 3 distilleries, and I'm looking for the one that you would associate with Ballantine's. Is it A, Milton Duff in Speyside, B, Glenburgie in Speyside, or C, Glentochers in Speyside? Tommy, I want to say that is a lovely background, the dark grey or the vPub background. Inverurie Whiskey Shop Mike is saying we don't need to fight, simply ignore them altogether. Far too much good whiskey to get rigmaroled and fancy stuff. Not all fighting needs to be fisticuffs, right, Mike? We can just make our protests by not spending the money. You're absolutely right. Vote with their wallets. This is all over the place. All of them. Some of you are answering. All 3 says Graham Fraser. All of them says Fernando. ABC says Roy Overmere. Where's Roy? Good to see you, Roy. It's always brilliant to have you in, buddy. Where's Roy? Alan McLaughlin is also saying all 3. Absolutely right. All 3 of these were not only associated with Ballantine's blended scotch, but there was a release back in the day of 15-year-old malt whiskies to celebrate the fact that they were all part of it. Guess what they did? They brought them all out at the same ABV as the blended Ballantine's. They put malt whiskey out there at 40% ABV. When's it going to stop? When you have to strip malt whiskey in order to do such a thing. Give it a 46% ABV. Don't chill filter it. Let people taste and feel. Charge us a bit more money. Anyway, nobody's getting a 0. Nobody's getting a donut tonight. Everybody gets a point from the first question. Question 2. Which of these distilleries is relied heavily upon for the Hankey Bannister blend? A, Balmainach, B, Balvenie, C, Ballandalach. So maybe for some of you that might be a trickier question. Spend a minute, think a minute, chew a minute, look at the options that we have. Which of these distilleries is relied heavily upon for Hankey Bannister? Is it Balmainach? Is it Balvenie? Or is it Ballandalach? Rob Smith is saying I already made it. It was Rob. He's predicting a 1 out of 10 tonight. It's going to be an interesting one to follow throughout tonight. All of the whiskies I've opened and sipped tonight are enjoyable, incredible, much more enjoyable than I expected it to be. Seb K is in from Portugal. Seb, so good to see you, buddy. Too Slow is in. Good to see you, Rob. Greg's Whiskey Guide from Paris. Fantastic. Adler Dan Ego. Not all of them, surely. Adler, that looks like a new name I'm welcoming. Nice to see you in. And Greg G is saying, please be all again. No, this is much harder. Think about it for a second. Hankey Bannister is an Inverhouse blend. Ballandalach haven't released anything yet. Balvenie, well, they might put something towards Monkey Shoulder blended malt, maybe something towards Grant's, but Hankey Bannister, no. By process of elimination, it's Balmainach. Balmainach, one of the 5 Inverhouse distilleries, but the only one of the 5 that we don't get to see as a malt in its own right, which is heartbreaking because the specs suggest that it would be a cracker. I've had a couple of independent bottlers, but they're few and far between. I've got an SMWS up there. Quite enjoy. I would love to be able to access more Balmainach. Lots of you celebrating 2 out of 2. Well done, everyone, as we go on to question 3. This distillery was founded in 1826. Seems like it's getting tricky, but be patient. But almost nothing of it remains after a 1950s rebuild. Which distillery are we talking about? 1826, 1950s rebuild, meaning that none of the original distillery remains. Is it A, Ben Wyvis, B, Ben Romach, or C, Ben Rinnes? It is crunchy. Inverurie Whiskey Shop is suggesting that they're going to do a shameless plug for a Balmainach single cask coming soon from an indie close to us. So they're in Inverurie. So who's close to them? Who would that be up in Inverurie? Would that be Carnmore? Murray McDavid? Absolutely everybody going with C. I can tell you that Benwowis was very short-lived. I think they were born in the 60s and killed off in the 70s. Glenwillis is now very much vibrant and alive and fantastic crowdsourced distillery. Wonderful initial 2018 release that they put out. Benromac stamped all over the bottle, telling us it's 1898. So by process elimination, it is C. Benrinnes. Greg's Whiskey Guide is celebrating his 3 out of 3, and Inverurie Whiskey Shop is suggesting a C as well. Mike Molasses on 3 out of 3. Terrific stuff. Question 4. Spot the malt and blend relationship that has stood for over 100 years. Am I talking about A. Blair Athol and Bells, B. Brookladdy and White Horse, or C. Talisker and Dewars? So you can see there is a theme to the quiz tonight. And the lounge is full of 3 out of 3s. Brilliant stuff. What is the malt and blend relationship that has stood for over 100 years? Is it A. Blair Athol and Bells, B. Brookladdy and White Horse, or C. Talisker and Dewars? Terrific. Such knowledgeable whiskey folk, you know that Blair Athol is the home of Bells. Brookladdy, no. White Horse you would associate with other distilleries. Absolutely Lagavulin, Craigellachie maybe. Talisker and Dewars, no, absolutely not. Talisker is Diageo and Dewars is obviously, well, Bacardi Dewars. So I was looking for Diageo's Blair Athol and Bells brands. If you answered A, give yourself a point as we move into the picture question. What distillery are we looking at? It matters not. That's not the question. What I'm actually going to ask you is, the distillery that we are looking at is what, and what was it built on top of? Was this distillery built on top of, I'm going to change the view here for a second, A. Convalmore, B. Capardonic, or C. Imperial? This distillery that we're looking at now, was it built on top of Convalmore, Capardonic, or Imperial? Oh, too slow, might have slipped. Did you, Rob? Did you slip up? Surely following the crowd tonight is the plan. Rick Johnson is saying what? Well, Rick, I can tell you that the distillery is a new build distillery, but it was actually built on top of a site that was torn down. A famous distillery, an unfortunate, unlucky distillery over its 100 years of existence. It spent less than half the time in production. It was eventually destroyed, razed to the ground, and this distillery was built on top of it. If it helps, I can tell you that we're looking at Dalmarnock. Convalmore is still standing, more or less, used mostly, I think, as a store for grants, but Convalmore is still a Diageo brand. Capardonic is unfortunately gone. Capardonic used to be Glen Grant number 2. It's now occupied by Forsyths, the coppersmiths. I'm actually looking at Dalmarnock built on top of Imperial. So if you answered C for Imperial, it's the right question. Rick Johnson is doing the right thing. Go with the group C. See, if you go with the group, there's going to be a lot of 10 out of 10s tonight. Cal Taylor is on for it. Hellswood is saying yay. Celebrating the Passmark, Nicholas, Tom Elmer, Mikey Hay, Dogs of No Uncles, Andy Pears, Philip Wagner, Whiskey with Molly, Justin Wan, lots and lots and lots of 5 out of 5s already. Unfortunately, my pal in Portugal, Bruno Martins, has tripped up somewhere on a 4. Buddy, stay in there. Still on for a good score. Question 6, starting to get trickier now. Of the 50 plus distilleries in Speyside, how many are actually open to the public? Is it A, almost all of them? B, is it only about a third of them? Or C, only a mere handful? 50 plus distilleries in Speyside, how many can you go and visit? Book online, book over the phone, whatever it may be. Is it A, almost all of them? B, about a third of them? Or C, only a handful? Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying, oh, that's a tough one. I know, Greg, especially for folk outside of Scotland, right? 50 plus distilleries. The reason I say 50 plus rather than specifying an actual number is because some distilleries are theoretically in Speyside but choose to identify as Eastern Highland or as a Highland distillery, and the Dalwhinnie's on the west, the Annoch/Knockdhu on the east. They could be either or, so it's always tricky. Falsgraf has got the right attitude, not all of them, but more than a handful, so most of you is absolutely a barfly lounge full of bees, and you're absolutely right. The hive mind works, about a third of them. Perfect. And Adler Dan Ego has just joined the Barflies. Thank you so much for supporting, my friend. You've now got access to all those lovely whiskey-themed emoji and a wee Barfly loyalty badge too. But you're actually keeping the vPub absolutely ad-free. Okay, let's move on to question 7. Which of these 6 million litre per annum distilleries has a non-age statement official release that's only available in the UK? Now I know what you're saying. How would I know this if I'm not in the UK? It's the quiz at the end. Stick with it. See if you can fathom it out. So we're looking for a big distillery, a 6 million litre per annum distillery with a non-age statement that you can only buy in the UK. Is that A, Nicol? Is it B, Glenkeith? Or is it C, Dufton? The theme tonight, Justin Wan, is distilleries that we only get to drink through blends. Distilleries that don't really have a brand of their own. The malt whiskies that we don't often get to enjoy unless we're fortunate through an independent bottler. Where's Roy O'Meara saying, ouch, we might have slipped up. Justin Wan is saying, C then. So we're looking for a 6 million litre per annum capacity distillery that has a non-age statement official release that's only available in the UK. So you need to think about this. Do you have Nicol available to you outside of the UK? Do you have Glenkeith available to you as an official release outside the UK? Or do you have Dufton available to you outside of the UK? I can tell you that. Nicol, it's 12-year-old, it's 15, it's 21-year-old, is available globally. Nicol is a globally available, albeit neutered and somewhat diluted single malt whiskey, but it's everywhere. Dufton, you don't see Dufton everywhere, but you do see Singleton everywhere. And when you do see Singleton, whether it's in duty free, whether it's in Europe, UK, and beyond, you see Singleton of Dufton. What you don't see is Glenkeith. But in Glenkeith, we have a poor 40%. Listen, Glenkeith was only brought back to life a decade ago, but they could be doing better than what they've got out there. But it's not pointed at us. It's pointed at mass market. It's a 40% single malt whiskey that, honestly, I've had a bottle on my shelf for about 5 years. You can happily ignore it. Glenkeith is what I was looking for. Here's a wee picture of the Glenkeith. Obviously, it's £30 in the UK. This is a master malt screen grab that I have here. This is what the label looks like. This is the bottle that I have. I can tell you when I bought it, I think I paid £20 for it. And it's been on my shelf for all of that time. I've still got more than half of it left. You tell me if that was good value. I suggest not. Question 8, getting on a bit here. Ballantine's, the world's second largest Scotch blend brand, requires a distillery expansion where? It's getting tricky now. If this distillery expansion goes ahead, I can tell you that it would make it the third largest malt distillery in Scotland. Where am I? A, I'm at Tormore in Speyside. B, I'm at Milton Duff in Speyside. Or C, I'm at Glentochers in Speyside. The owners of Ballantine's is Pernod Ricard Chivas Brothers. All of their distilleries remain inside Speyside with the exception of Scapa. Lassie Hjort Oatsman is in. Good to see you, Lassie. Oh, he's had a wee banana skin. He slipped up on something on a 6 out of 7. Graham Fraser on 7. Graham Fraser is just saying that Glenkeith is available in Chivas 50cl bottles only at the distillery. It's not a widespread release, buddy. It's certainly not available outside the UK. It's 50 CL bottles. Yep, the distillery collection. Mikey Haze in. Good to see you, Mikey. Ooh, there are some people going to slip up here. There are some people going to slip on that wee banana skin. I can tell you that Ballantyne's is going to require a distillery expansion. It won't be at Tormore because Tormore used to be owned by Chivas Brothers Pernod Ricard and it was sold to Elixir Distillers who now own Tormore, so it will not be that distillery. Glentockers is not going to be, or there are no plans that I'm aware of for that to be expanded. Milton Duff is undergoing a potential expansion that will take it to 16 million litres per annum. The only distilleries larger than Milton Duff will therefore be Glenfiddich and Glenlivet, and it'll pip Maclean as the third largest malt distillery in Scotland. Milton Duff. Milton Duff. The third largest distillery, and we don't even see it as a single malt. Incredible. Rob Smith is celebrating 8 out of 8, as long as Rob too slow. Sugar Kitty, been watching Phil and Deepa. Terrific stuff, Sugar Kitty. Jimmy Jazz on 8 out of 8. Falscraft is saying rarely we're here on an 8 out of 8. Graham Young, fantastic service. A laugh is good to see Andreas. Philip Wagner, good to see Philip on an 8. Jerry Miller on an 8, fantastic. Alan McLaughlin, 8. Greg's Whiskey Guide in Paris, 8. Hellswed on 8. Terrific. There will be a 10 out of 10 tonight, I guarantee. Penultimate question. Strathyla is known for its photogenic twin pagoda ventilator roofline. Which of these also has a very similar setup? So we're looking for another distillery with a twin pagoda ventilator roofline. Is that A, Speyburn, B, Royal Lochnagar, or C, Strathmill? Hopefully you see some form of theme within the theme here, that we tend to be heavily focused on Speyside. Speyside is the picnic basket for the blender, isn't it? Mickey Hayes saying, I went away from the crowd to answer on a hunch. Might stick to the crowd to answer next time. Maybe Mikey, have you slipped up, buddy? I'm looking for another photogenic-ish roofline of a twin pagoda ventilator. Is it Speyburn, Royal Lochnagar, or Strathmill? Such knowledgeable folk. This must have been easy for you. Colin is saying C is distilleries with few single malt releases. You're getting it. You're getting it. Fantastic. So if you pick up on the theme, even the hard questions become easy for you. Of course, it's Strathmill. Here's a couple of pictures side by side. On the left, we have Strathyla. Very pretty, picturesque. Always looks to me like, I don't know, I taste colours, and I also see faces in buildings. And on the Strathyla, I see a kind of someone wearing a hat almost. And on the right, I see the same thing at Strathyla, although they're kind of rolling their eyes, almost kind of looking up in disgust. There we have it. Strathyla, C was the answer. I'm looking for the 9 out of 9s now as we roll into the ass hat at the end. We always finish on an ass hat. On 9 out of 9s, we have Whiskey with Molly, Ben, congratulations, Alan McLaughlin, Greg's Whiskey Guide, Philip Wagner, Mike Molasses, terrific. Tom is in Whiskey and Wine Trails. Good to see you. 9 out of 9, waiting for the ass hat to knock me back to 40%. Brilliant and on theme, Tom. Thank you. Graham Young is on 9 out of 9. Terrific. Jimmy Jazz, 9 out of 9. Thanks to those smarter. Following the crowd, Jimmy, and admitting it. There's no shame in admitting that you're part of the community and you use their knowledge too, right? Graham Fraser on 9 out of 9. Of course, Graham. Terrific stuff. Here is the ass hat at the end. Strap in, everyone. France remains the largest export market for Scotch, with around 50 million litres per annum exported annually. How many of those million litres per annum is single malt? What proportion of that 50 million litres is single malt? Remember, this is the ass hat. Is it A, about triple the capacity of Caol Ila? B, about the same as the capacity of Caol Ila? Or C, is it about a third of the capacity of Caol Ila? James Morgan, I'm not even going to read that out, but it's brilliant. If A to F go, F to H go B, and to H into the alphabet goes C. James, I love it. It's good to see you in. Number 10 will be my undoing, is suggesting molasses Mike. Let's see if that happens. Too Slow is saying, what? Sounds crazy, so C. So we have 50 million litres per annum going to our biggest export market, which is France. But what I want to ask you, of all the scotch that goes to France, what percentage, what ratio is single malt? Does it triple the capacity of Caol Ila, that number? Is it about the same as the capacity of Caol Ila, or is it about a third of the capacity of Caol Ila? Grace Whiskey Guy saying it's moving fast here with 130 distilleries, but it's still tiny, so I'll say C. Where's Roy? Is saying B for about the same as Caol Ila. I'm guessing B, says Fernando. Rob Smith is saying B. Kel Taylor, B. Timothy Wamathai. Timothy, that looks like a new name. Nice to welcome you in. Thanks for participating in the vPub and the quiz at the end. Nicholas is saying B. Graham Young is saying B. I can put you all out your Jerry Miller is saying nervous. And Adler is saying B as well, along with Sugar Kitty. I can tell you that you all are absolutely spot on. The capacity of Caol Ila is somewhere in the order of 6 million, 6.5 million or thereabouts litres. I told you earlier tonight that malt whiskey remains only about 10% versus blended scotch is 90% more or less, and incremental percentages of every other category. And that's certainly true in France. So triple Caol Ila would have to be somewhere in the order of 18 million litres, far too high. About a third would be about 2 million litres, far too low. So we're actually looking for something about the same size as Caol Ila in order for you to get your 10 out of 10. Who made it? Service Alaphis, Andreas got his 10. Andy Pears is saying so close on a 9. Jerry Miller managed a 10, celebrating. I'm looking out for the emoji. Fantastic. Sugar Kitty on a 10. Congratulations, Rob Smith. That just made my weekend. Graham Young, whoop, whoop, 10 out of 10. So many 10 out of 10s. Amazing. Congrats to the numerous 10 out of 10, says Tom Elmer. Also, Sugar Kitty saying congrats as well. Fantastic. At least 3, 4, 5 of you on a 10 out of 10. That's a good way to end this vPub, don't you think? For me, it is. For me, I am surprised at how many bottles made it over to there. I need to put this one back there too. I've taken another dram out of it. It's not easy to recommend a £70 bottle of blended whiskey, but I need to listen to my own words. We're not talking about, we can tell a lot from on paper. Absolutely, we can. But when we taste it, it tells us a lot more than the message on paper. I've had a few sherry forward whiskies tonight. I've had the Thompson Brothers. I've had the North Star. It was sherry forward. The White Heather was also bizarrely sherry forward. But this wee turntable one at the end, of course, is the most expensive one. It's horrible to have to say. But I think it's the one that's I'm struck most by. But the takeaway tonight is the £25 Prohibition that surprised me. It's the wonderful, amazing, inspired release from Adelphi in Maclean's Nose for 30 quid. Incredible stuff. It's the Thompson Brothers 6-year-old 46%. Not going to be around forever. Amazing. Just anxiety-free. Wonderful to pour for anybody. Blended Scotch whiskey. Terrific stuff. And it's all of these, honestly, over my shoulder. That means that, yes, if we are really into our malt whiskey, if we really love to connect with that singular experience, the people, the place, the location, all of those wonderful things, that's amazing we've got those there and we can indulge in that. But know that right now where we are in whiskey, we will be charged a premium to stay in that club. And the only way we can beat that is to stand up, speak up, taste, and share when we taste things that are amazing and good value for money. At the very least, better value for money. The industry teaches us that loyalty will cost us, not just loyalty to a brand, but loyalty to a category. I've absolutely loved hanging out with you on another Thursday night. I've loved sipping, honestly, hand on heart, I've loved sipping blended Scotch whiskey tonight too. Loved it. Thanks for the fun as always, says Tom Elmer. Slant your barflies. Thanks to you, Tom. Thank you very, very much. We sold your bookers. It's on Scotch Whisky Auctions. I put the link last week so we can see. I think it went for £85. So that's £85 going to charity, Tom. I hope we did okay there. I look forward to maybe having the opportunity to in some way pay you back for the generous gesture, but that'll make its way to the Ben charity. I'll hand it over to Jenny Carlson very, very soon. Thank you, buddy. Rick Johnson is saying, thanks for another informative and fun VPub, Roy. Slanch and cheers to the barflies. Justin Mann is saying, great message. Hopefully these high quality blends will hit the shelves in Hong Kong soon. I hope so too. Des, good to see you, Des. Thanks, Roy. A great blend of questions. Brilliant, Des. Love it. Fantastic. Fantastic VPub, says Mike Molasses, and Rob Smith says another great VPub. It's a great VPub every time you guys come out and hang out with me. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you all again next weekend. And until then, I'll raise this glass of surprisingly delicious blended malt whiskey. Remind you all that you're very dearly loved. And I look forward to hanging out with you next week. Another wee night behind the bar at the VPub. Slanchiva, everybody. Cheers.